tells you something.
There's an analogy there.
Somewhere there it is, yeah.
somewhere.
Maybe what money will do to draw them in.
See,
Uh-oh.
now that shows us we're live streaming. About 20 seconds delay and we're out there. So we are recording and live streaming when you are ready, Mr. Chair.
Just waiting for the last few seconds to tick away.
Turn me off.
It always takes 2 minutes for the last couple of seconds. to go. 11 o'clock. We'll call the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee to order. Let's see. So we call to order. We have a quorum. We have the approval of the agenda. Anybody have any changes they wish to make to the agenda? Right. So do we need a motion on that or just the chairman?
Either way,
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second that.
Been moved and second to approve the agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes. We now have a call to the public. Does anybody wish to address the committee for anything that might not be on the agenda? Nobody online, probably.
there's a slew of people online, but they're all related to the agenda.
All right, we're gonna move down then to our first business item, number 4. Consider approving the prime contract change order number 7 with Clark Construction in the net additional amount of $29,369,000 and authorize the board chair to sign the same. So
If you want. You don't, I mean, I can present it, but if you want to answer questions from there, if there are any, you're fine to do that too.
there may be questions, I'm not sure, but
Come on up.
Nicole, if you want to present it.
Sure, so this is the second change order that's come to the board's attention. Even though it's numbered number 7, I think there's some that happen that don't require this level of approval. I think the first one that came to you was number 5. So I just don't want you to be confused about the numbering. As we talked about the first time the change order came, there was still a lot of value engineering on the first one that was being incorporated in. Remember, we took credit for not requiring Davis-Bacon wages and that was a net positive, right? And so instead of reducing the contract amount, we put it over here into what that was called a buyout line. And now Clark Construction is able to pull from that line before they impact the contingency line or any other contract budget. So as you can see, the culmination of the current change orders on the plate is an addition of almost just under $30,000. And Heidi can speak more so than I can to the detail behind, what some of these changes were. Yeah, she's on top of her stuff.
Oh, it's not here.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Is there any questions on it, or you just want me to go through every?
I think if there's any questions or if there's some big highlights that led to, that might be a good.
I always see there's a lot of changes that don't involve any costs.
So I do note that on there, so that way you know that we don't have any costs from the contractors, and then also we do issue a $0 change order to the contractors because CCDs are contract documents to the project, and so they identify they have no cost to that, so we tie this change order then for these CCDs to their contract. That's what this change order does then.
Okay. I see there are some changes dealing with the kitchen.
There
Area.
is, yep. So when we were doing buyout, the contractors, when we took the bids in, was discussion with the sheriff and his team that a few items were going to be provided with the sheriffs when they moved over from the existing facility. And then it kind of came through when we were doing our shop drawings that they decided to purchase new. So we had to add these back into our project here to make sure that they were covered when the new facility opened.
Okay. So the difference then between the, let's see here. Oh, I see. If you add those up, does that come up to the 29,369 or close?
So each line item, so we have different PCOs. A PCO is a potential change order, and that then turns into this prime contract change order. So we kind of track everything as a separate line item in our budget to PCOs and then kind of combine them all in a package here in this. PCO number 24 was the construction, or I'm sorry, the food service stuff. And that total was $12,416. And then we had PCO number 27. So during a review of shop drawings, we found that we had some Z fairing still in the project that wasn't eliminated. The contractor brought it to our attention. So we had a deduct there from that for a credit to the project of $8,095 there. Moving on to PCO number 29. This here was a change order directive from the architect. Here we changed a few items. So CC 5 here. There's a lot of different items that were changed on this item, the CCD. Some of them just a cleanup for the building permit application. Some abbreviations were changed. We do have some deck for the canopy. The height there changed a little bit, which increased the cost of steel because we had to raise it up and for lighting and also for the drainage from the roof there. We had let's see what other costs did we have in this one here. So also with the Kirby steel with the canopy. And that was it for CCD number 5. And that cost change was an add to them of $17,184. And then going down to PCO 31. This one here, we had costs related to Strauss Masonry. So part of the MDOC, they required that the booking rooms, that they increase the size to 150 square feet. So we had to move that wall out. With moving that wall out, then we had some cost for the mason there to adjust for that change. So that was then a cost to them of $1,554. And then going down to CCD 8, number PCO 34. This one here was for steel. We had some canopy changes in this one as well. So we had two different CCDs that changed the canopy on that. So that was the cost for that one. And then Reichenbach here, they had cost here because we had to add a new pipe chase to collect the rainwater up there. That was that CCD. And then CCD 9, there was no cost changes at all to any of the contractors. So that was a total add that of 29.
364.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? So I'm thinking we're probably gonna see more of these as we go along in a project this size.
Yeah, no,
They-
we're,
Yes, you will have another one coming next month. Already working on those changes, so.
I
and
would
we
like
had-
to see in person.
Yeah, it's good to
Yeah,
see
it's great.
everybody. Yes, and we'll start having more meetings on site here once.
Very soon.
Yes,
and I would imagine as we go along, this packet will get larger. You think?
I hope
In the
not,
late-
but.
in the beginning.
It's not the goal.
Not
And
the
not
goal,
the
right?
goal, no, we
Okay.
try to make sure, but you never know. It depends on, what comes up and any changes, so.
Okay.
So,
Good to know. All right.
any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Eddie. And
Great
it's
rest
good
of your
seeing
day.
you.
You too.
Looking forward to Thursday.
I will consider approving the prime contract change order number 7 with Clark Construction in the net amount of $29,369 to the work session next week. Support. Moved and supported, move that to the work session. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye. Moves forward. Our next item, number 5, consider approving the engagement letter with Manor Custodian dated June 2nd, 2023 for accounting and consulting services and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
Hello, stranger.
Hello, everyone. It's like a bad penny. I keep coming back.
Steve Kurnovic. So Commissioner Embry, I don't know if
I don't
you,
think we've met.
okay.
No.
But we do have a new commissioner in the house, Steve, so.
Wonderful.
Yes, he's
Pleasure, sir.
brand new,
Nice to
he
meet
jumped right in, for sure. So Steve's here to help with this item. I know I reported to the board about some recent staff changes with the resignation of staff accountant Chris Whitmer. We needed to immediately fill some on-site duties. We were able to secure a remote accountant through Robert Half, but certainly still duties that couldn't leave our house, if you will. So we did reach out to Maynard Casterison at the time. We already, as you know, have a contract with them. They provide accounting or financial consulting services, and they've done so very well for us in the past. We still utilize the services of our contracted director of financial services, Steve Kurnovic. And so we thought we'd expand on that existing relationship. So we have brought, I say accountant, but that's not the right term, is it, Steve? It is an associate. An
Right.
associate.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. We don't care what you call us as long as it's
Well, in the contract you do, but
not. Yes, but it is associate, correct.
but to my point, I suppose my point is that we didn't require Steve's level of services for this engagement. So really we had to go back to the contract. I don't know that an associate amount was clearly spelled out in there. Maynard has had maybe, some increases, some slight increases in those amounts, maybe since the last contract. But I feel like the main thing was getting that associate level in there, the lower dollar amount. So legal counsel has reviewed the agreement from Maynard. They did have one small change that Maynard made to a sentence, confidentiality, and that was basically put in there because of some of the duties that associate from Maynard is handling for us regarding payroll and benefits, that we wanted to add that confidentiality statement in there. So Steve, do you want to add anything about the proposed agreement?
No, not really. I mean, I think you hit it all, Nicole. I mean, I think it really was just a refresher, just because it had been, I think, prior to the prior administrator, when Margaret was there, we had something signed. So that was 2 or 3 years ago, I think. So it was more of just a refresher language, and like you said, modifying the rates, because those do change on a periodic basis, on an annual basis. So just updating those. And I think you're probably right, Nicole, we didn't have anything specific in there about an associate level type person, which Phil is, that's in there helping do things. So yeah, I think it was just kind of an update for that and so forth. So pretty much the rest of the verbiage is the same. It's the same language that we used the last time. It's the same language we use for all the other counties and other municipalities that we work with and do similar tasks for. So it's pretty boilerplate. And like your attorneys have reviewed it, like you said, and that was, I think 44 North had that one sentence that we added, and that's why I'm an accountant, not an English teacher, because I didn't write the sentence very well. It wasn't written very well, so I modified we updated the sentence from 44 North. So yeah, that was the basic gist.
So I did notice a term of contract in here.
Right, and that is basically because it's as needed. So it's as you folks need us, whether you need us today or you need us a year from now. It would be in place, and because it's only when you call us, we don't have a specific set thing that we're going to do on a weekly or monthly basis or whatever. It's basically as you need us. So really we kind of leave the term out. That way it leaves it a little more generic and open-ended for you folks to say, we need you today, or 2 months from now you need us, or whatever. That way we're not bringing a new engagement letter every, on an annual basis to the board, as long as a lot of that regular language doesn't change.
And it sure was helpful to have something in place, you know, to be able to call up Steve and have this resource here the next day, you know, to have something in place. So that was valuable.
So I know we've had staff turnover and it seems like getting qualified people in to replace key positions is getting more and more difficult as we go down the road. But I'm thinking this is one we probably need to look towards the future. We know we have a 10-year financial forecast that is not real bright. And so we need to find some solutions to be able to do this economically. And I'm just going to throw some things out. They're not going to be answers you're going to be able to give me the committee today. But I'm just wondering, in terms of a hiring wage for a beginning position, are we competitive enough? Do we raise the wage and maybe save more than contracting out our accounting functions by getting a qualified CPA? I mean, is that a possibility? I don't know when the county moved from a county administrator to a county administrator controller position. I know I've worked in counties that have had both and they both seem to function. I don't know the reason the county board moved to that act. But maybe we need to have a conversation with the treasurer's office. I see the treasurer sitting here. He may not want to have anything to do with it. But are there some efficiencies of scales? It seems like there might be some things you're both doing that maybe there'd be a way of accommodating that kind of function in the future. And then I guess that's what I'm throwing out. We need to take a look at finding a solution that we can afford for the long run.
Agreed. And I think anything is on the table. And I think that conversations with the treasurer's office are very open. You know, we talked at budget time about, I think we brought that up. What if we go back to the way it was? You know, it's been this way maybe 20, 25 years, but that doesn't mean that that's what's best for the county. So I'm very open to having those discussions, and we'll definitely run the numbers on what the possibilities are. You know, the resources we're using now are meant to you know, stop the bleeding, right? There's services that administration cannot drop the ball on. And so that's why those resources were brought on. They are meant to be temporary while we transition into what makes sense. You know me, I've never been a knee-jerk fill a position because it's empty. I always like to hang back and analyze and look to see what we've got left. But at this point, Melissa and I are the only ones left, and we cannot take, we can't take on all the duties. So we needed to get those bodies in here. But it's not meant to be a long-term solution unless financially it would make sense.
The only other thing I'm thinking is we haven't hired a deputy county administrator yet. That's going to be next year's budget. I didn't know if there'd be a way of those two positions coming together. I think Lick County, if I remember, Ryan Wood, but
Craig Longnecker.
Craig, yeah.
Mhm.
I think he had a CPA background. So I don't know if that's a possibility too.
I think, like I said, I think everything's on the table.
Okay.
Definitely be looking at that, and I think you'll hear something very soon.
Well, I think this personally is a good proposal to move forward in the short term to take care of what we need to get done. Any other questions or concerns, comments? No. Would you like to make a motion then?
Move to take this consideration for approving the engagement letter with Manor Custerison dated June 2nd, 2023 for accounting and consulting services. And authorize the board chair to sign the same to our regular board meeting.
I'll support that. We moved and supported to move the engagement letter with Manor Custodian to the work session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. It passes.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Steve.
Great, thank you. Good to see you all. Well, keep us posted if there's anything we can, obviously Phil's there on a regular basis, but if there's anything you need, obviously I'm here. We talked about some other options and back to Jerry, back to your point on the term, that's kind of the beauty of this is that I agree with you, short term, you know, that type of thing. And like I tell other people, we don't like to put an end date on it, so to speak, because, you know, if you need us for 2 weeks or 2 months or however long it is, then it's up to you folks, you know, and it doesn't lock you into, well, you have to use us for 12 weeks or you have, you know, whatever. If the things go wonderful and you nail somebody down in 8 days or 8 weeks, that person starts, we help them get trained and we step away. So I think that's kind of why we do it that way too. So I think it benefits you folks too. So anyway, so that's kind of the thought process. If there's anything we can do, help vet candidates, whatever it may be, we're always open to help.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Great.
Enjoy your,
Good to see you. All right, take care.
It's always nice to see, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we'll move on then to the presentation of preliminary analysis by John Ingram with Johnson Controls. Did you get everything shared on there? Or- If you gentlemen want to come, we have the 3 chairs here. if you like.
Not as scary as I look.
Oh, you are.
Jerry, throw me under the bus.
So at the last board meeting, we did approve an agreement with Johnson Controls to take a look at some improvements in our energy systems that might relate to some savings and reinvest those savings and making some improvements for the long run. So you're back with the next portion of that proposal.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
Nicole, did you want to say anything before?
I think that's perfect. I think it's perfect. They've been very busy. They've been analyzing energy invoices. They've been analyzing the consumers and DTE bills and they're ready to present. So
Great.
go ahead and introduce
Yeah, I'll go
yourselves.
ahead with introductions. I brought some friends this time so you could hear a new perspective since I've presented. This would be probably the 5th time Nicole's seeing a presentation, but the first few presentations were about the program. What we're excited to share today is about Isabella County and what we found. So there's 2 or 3 slides just as a quick refresher about the program. But then we've been given, you know, Steve over there homework just about every other day for finding drawings and utility bills and capital improvement plans and everything else. So he's been very supportive of that. So we have a lot of information and we have some preliminary results to share with you. Also, these guys introduce themselves.
Yep, John Crawford. I'm responsible for all the engineering, getting all of our internal team members, external contractors, make sure the scopes are accurate for what you're looking for to save the energy and bring up your facilities to the latest, greatest standards. Working with our project management team to make sure that the costing is in line and bringing all the parts and pieces together to make it a working project for you.
And I am Mike Popa. I'm the area manager for Johnson Controls, a Michigan native myself. And then I really help manage the team. I've been with Johnson Controls now 23 years. I've done a lot of energy projects throughout the state, throughout the Midwest. And really my responsibility is to make sure that you've got everything that you need from a financial contractual basis to put together a good contract. Make sure it's the right thing for you guys.
Good. Thank you, John. Pleasure.
All right, we'll get into it here. Last time I was here, you each had a laptop set up for the screen, so hopefully you could
Though,
still see the figures from there. So quickly, we'll just go through, you know, the desired outcomes from a program like this, a quick overview of performance contracting, and then get right into our findings. I think you're very well aware that there's a lot of, you know, older equipment and some maintenance on those that have been deferred that we could address to this program. And then look at the savings analysis and roll that into a business case with a 20-year projection of cash flows from the various saving streams. So key outcomes to address here are facility issues, aging infrastructure, and then, you know, what is labeled internal, external customer satisfaction is, you know, your customers being, you know, the citizens and taxpayers, people that come in here, as well as, you know, people that work and live in this community, and making sure that they have, you know, proper lighting and health and comfort. also addressing deferred capital projects, old equipment that past the end of its life is at risk of failing very, very soon. Sustainability, health and safety and environmental emissions, as well as the financial sustainability. So a quick overview of performance contracting. It's, use money saved on operating and energy costs towards the facility improvements. There's a statistic over here as of April 2023, the previous 12 months, the cost of electricity has increased 8.4%. I saw another statistic that said over the past 2 years, the average family is spending another $500 a month on basic needs and, rent and groceries and that. So avoiding electricity is a strong consideration for financial stability as well as environmental stability. There's no upfront costs, so any costs associated with the project are paid through savings. So you don't pay anything until essentially the project's done and you have savings identified and guaranteed, and you pay for it with those savings. And then, reduced risk part of that is a guaranteed scope and cost too. So for any given scope, you have guarantees on the saving streams as well as the cost. So no change orders associated with the given scope. This is just a graphic to kind of show how, various building systems are very interrelated now. It used to be, you have a system here, a system there, but they all kind of communicate with building management systems over the top of controls. You could have dashboards where you go in and see various systems, and it helps reduce the operating costs and surprises associated with, okay, something's down, you don't find out about it until later, or more damage happens to that, or someone's uncomfortable for a longer period of time than they need to be.
John, let's pause for a moment. I know we have a new commissioner, so I know somebody's seen some of this, and we'll get into the meat of the presentation, but if you have questions, just stop us.
Oh, you.
Okay. I just,
Not shy.
okay, good. Don't want to assume that you are getting all this in your first try.
So I'm gonna turn it over to the engineer to talk about, some of the items that we found and potential savings. So
Yep.
slide this over to you, Jen.
Okay, so air handling units, number one, there is kind of just a photo tour of what we saw in the buildings. These first couple happen to be from this building up on the roof in the penthouse there. So the air handling units are original to the building, as is most of the equipment here. Throughout the facilities, we're going to look at doing a refurbishment, replacing a lot of the moving parts on the equipment where it makes sense, getting them back to the way that they should be operational. System for most of the units up there was designed as a variable air volume system. A lot of those dampers have stopped working over the years, so we're going to get all that functional again, make it work as a VAV system again. The next two pictures go together, number 2, number 3 there. The number 2 is the cooling, the remote condensers, the chillers is number 3. Those are what provides the cooling to the building. So those are, as you can see, well past their age. So those from the 70s as well. The staff here has been doing a good job of keeping it going, replacing stuff as it fails, but it is becoming a more of a maintenance issue for them. So that would be on our list to replace as well. Number 4 is a rooftop unit across the street or across the parking lot there over at the trial courts building. And those are 20, 24 years old. So they're at the end of their useful life as well. Those are still functioning, but they've been having more and more failures, a lot of compressors going out, refrigeration system.
We had one of those fail last year.
Really?
That one.
Of course.
Some of the VFDs are in bypass. I think they just replaced one last year as well. So there's, again, maintenance costs are going up. So it makes sense to replace these and try and get some efficiencies out of it as well. In both buildings, there's a humidification system that is not functional. That hasn't run in years. It doesn't sound like it's a huge issue the way it is right now. So we're gonna kind of leave that as is and replace the other equipment to get you up to a functional aspect on those buildings.
And I suppose that would be a question for you as well. With the humidification systems, you would have a boiler running to make steam and you'd have additional energy use. So, to humidify in the winter, if you've not had humidity issues, then maybe it's not worth addressing that otherwise.
Would fall to the folks who work here.
So that's something that we could figure out later, but yeah, we're looking at, okay, if you've not had any humidity, lack of humidity issues in the winter and don't need that humidification, why invest the additional dollars and energy costs in those systems? But if it would make it more comfortable, then potentially it's worth it.
Would with the, and forgive me, this is not at all my area of expertise. Would making the HVAC system more efficient in this building lead to the need for humidification in the winter? Potentially, like a tighter, picturing a tighter building.
It shouldn't, it actually might help in the other direction
Okay.
where by making things more efficient, the
Great.
moisture that's in the building through the building envelope filtration, fixing that kind of stuff and reducing the amount of outside air when it's not needed. That might actually help maintain the moisture in the building. On the chiller side, we're also looking at the new chiller. Right now is probably best suited for a roof mounted chiller, kind of where the cooling condensers are right now. So we're gonna have to work with Steve and his staff on the engineering side of that, the structural analysis, make sure that the roof, we're not putting up too much weight there. So we'll have to evaluate that as well.
And one of the things you'll see later is looking at putting some solar panels on the roof, the evaluation of the roof. And the support structure will be done in conjunction with, the potential additional weight and redistribution of the mechanical equipment as well as the solar.
And none of that disturbs that membrane that's there, correct?
The roofing,
Yes, the units.
correct. We'll work with the contractors, make sure that the roofing is maintaining warranty.
Right, we reach out to the roofing manufacturers too and get written statements that, if we take X, Y, Z measures that the maintain the warranty.
Throughout a lot of the buildings, there's other equipment that needs to be replaced. First photo, there's a domestic water heater. Those are used in every building, various sizes, various ages. Some need to be replaced because of the age, condition. Others may have been replaced a few years ago and those will stay as is. So we're not looking at just replacing the equipment to replace it. We're looking at the condition and the age of it. And if it's at or beyond its useful life, it's on a list to replace. Same thing with furnaces, photo 2 there, furnaces and condensers. A lot of buildings have these furnaces tucked away. Some are older, 80% efficient, some are newer, a little more efficient. Again, we'll be looking at the age of the equipment and replacing stuff that makes sense if it's at or beyond its useful life, or if it's been having more failures over the recent years. The boilers in that picture from the trial court building, as well as some boilers in this building, are past their useful life and should be replaced. In that photo, the last boiler up against the wall there is not working right now. It's being used as parts. So the staff is, again, making things work with what they have, but the boilers are on their last leg. So we're gonna propose to replace those. And then pumps, whether it's chill water pumps in this building, hot water pumps, where we're replacing boilers, usually it makes sense to replace the pumps and get some more efficient pumps in place. So we'll be looking at those as well. Lighting, I shouldn't say most, a handful of buildings, the larger buildings like this one, trial court, they've been replaced with lighting already. We did notice that in the bills too, as Steven mentioned that they did that around December, January. And sure enough, when we saw the bills, you could see about an 18 to 20% drop in utilities. So we would like to continue that trend and continue doing lighting in the rest of the buildings that hasn't been done yet. So we have interior lighting, some exterior lighting, changing out to LED, as well as motion sensors, occupancy sensors where it makes sense based on the run times. Controls. This building has a mixture of pneumatics and DDC. So we use the DDC brain, the pneumatic muscle.
Direct digital control. Engineer, I caution him on using acronyms all the time. He used VFDs earlier. We did talk about variable frequency J's, but yeah. Digital controls instead of compressed data.
Yes.
Electric controls.
So in this building, we would recommend replacing all the pneumatics with the digital controls. It'll give a lot more flexibility, a lot more insight to the building. They can do remote troubleshooting. They can look down to the space temperature and being able to give, more accurate control of the building.
I was gonna say, Steve or whomever will have more control over what's on and what's off.
Yeah.
You will?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Okay.
And then see the states of those. So, currently if there's so the damper should be open. If you don't have any kind of position feedback, you don't know whether it's really where it's supposed to be. So you're maybe not getting the fresh air that you're supposed to get if it's not open, or maybe you get too much if it's open too far. So when you get some of that feedback to say, okay, I told the control system to do this and I got verification that it did that
But not just that it's on and off, but also the status of that piece of equipment.
position. And then part of the controls, we talked about variable frequency drives too, rather than having a damper, motor running something, full speed and then controlling it by, with the damper, you could control the speed of that motor and only use the energy necessary to get that flow rather than dampering it back. So that's where the efficiency comes from with variable frequency and a control system to balance all that.
And then some of the buildings, like in photo 3 there, have also residential style standalone thermostat. Some buildings, we can use that, put it on Metasys, still use the same furnaces and equipment that's in the building, but change out the thermostats and being able to bring it onto a platform where again, Steve and his staff can see those spaces, remotely monitor it as needed, change temperatures, gain some more savings by doing some setbacks when nobody's in the buildings. So a lot of those can be changed out as well. Building envelope, we briefly touched on that a little bit for this building. So we'd be looking at the roof at the trial court building that is beyond its useful life or right at the end of the warranty. And with the recommendation next for the solar panels, that would be replaced and a new roof put on there.
Was that an analysis basically because of the benefit of the solar panel? So like you're weighing that the useful life of the roof against if we replaced it now and we could put solar panels on it now?
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't want to put on solar panels on a roof and then have to replace the roof in 2 years.
Sure.
The panels are going to last 20, 25 years or more, so.
So the additional expense of having to remove, if you kept the existing roof, put solar on it, then to have replace the roof, take the solar panels off, put the new roof on, put the solar panels back.
Look around everything, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's part of the evaluation that needs to be done in the next step, but
Right.
preliminary looks like, what we look at is you need a new roof either way, kind of outside of any energy savings projects.
Yeah.
So, now would potentially be the right time to do that. Yeah. And then look at putting, the solar generation.
Photo 2 is a thermal image of some of the windows over in the trial courts building. Just showing that there's, whether it's windows and door seals, we'll go through and do a survey to identify any uncontrolled ventilation. We want to bring the ventilation through the mechanical system, not a bunch of cracks and broken seals around doors and windows. So we'll go through and survey all that stuff, fix anything that's damaged or broken. Specifically those windows, there's some seals that are broken. Steve identified that some of the, I think moisture's coming in, water's coming in through some of the seals that have pulled away from the windows and the frames. So we'll take a look at that.
so we can come back with pictures of those areas that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
As far as this is concerned.
Yeah.
So is that just a matter of recalking a lot of those, or is there more?
Some might be
to it than that?
recalking, some might be an actual membrane, a rubberized type of material gasket. Yeah.
Mhm.
Put back in there.
Okay.
And then the solar panels, as John had mentioned, we have 4 sites that look like they have good application for solar PV. Admin building, trial courts,
PV being photovoltaic, the electrical generation.
thank you. Yes. Material recycling facility, the Commission on Aging.
So we did look at several other sites and just like we kind of touched on and what makes the most sense, the most cost effective way to do this, put it on a roof. And then, I think I mentioned before, something if a roof's at the end of its life, it could be replaced with solar. If it's new, like this building, you put solar panels on it. Where you get an issue is a roof that's in a midlife crisis, where it doesn't make sense to replace a roof that's only, 10, 15 years old.
Sure.
So then we would look at, alternative ground mount systems or parking canopy mounted systems. Also important on that is the energy use in the building, the available space. Can you match the space available for solar panels to the available use? And then the utility rates, you're paying different rates at different facilities. So we really looked at pretty much any property owned by the county and got down to, okay, these four look very promising.
So cost wise, are the rooftop units more affordable than say, they gotta be cheaper than a canopy
Absolutely.
carport type?
Yeah, the rooftop units, a lot of the time, so especially on a flat roof, can kind of just be set to get on there and stamped together and weighted down. Whereas, ground mount systems, you need to have a foundation and then the steel structures support that.
Mhm.
And then the canopy structures are the most effective, but you also have the added benefit of, rain and snow protection and a canopy.
Yeah.
And with, Inflation Reduction Act's investment tax credits, they're potentially paying, 25 to 40% of carports if you put of your covered parking, if you put solar on it. So it's a kind of way to leverage more of those dollars, in an area that maybe it would make sense, but that's part of it.
But are they paying up to 40% for any solar installation?
Any solar
Not just
installation,
carports?
yeah. What they've said is they won't do, they'll pay for the canopies and the solar, that portion, but they won't pay for a new roof for it. So you can't say, okay, I'm gonna build a new county building to put solar on it, so you need to pay a portion, they do the line that we don't replace roofs, but any structures, canopy structures built to support that, they will cover.
Is a parking lot, a carport setup out here? Is that something that it has ever been considered?
Well, we're actually looking at, and maybe we get into it a little bit.
Yeah.
We have a couple of layouts and John could talk about it, but there's only, it might be easier to talk about when we
Yeah.
get to the screen. Go ahead.
Get there. So at this one is the admin building. Again, we try to maximize the amount of solar PV we put on the roof with the utility consumption of the building. Michigan has some rules as to the net metering, how large you can be. And if you get over that certain size, you get dinged on how much energy value you get back. So we want to try to match it as best we can with your usage. So here you'll see it's a slightly smaller footprint than what is available on the roof because we don't need all that space to match your utility profile, as well as some of the shading, the taller trees on this side and the penthouse. The way the sun moves throughout the year and throughout the day, it'll put shading onto the solar panels, which make them less effective or ineffective.
So you could see here the projected generation over the various months. Obviously, in the summer, there's more sun, so there's more generation. So this is done, it's with a program that looks at decades worth of data. You could do the layouts, takes into account any kind of shading you could put in there, look at, 3D images within this program of trees and say, okay, this rooftop unit's this tall, so we could avoid shadows or, derate the amount of production from that panel if it falls within shadows. So for some portion of the year.
So you're saying this is the most efficient configuration for our roof?
The most,
most-
financially economic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because if we go above that threshold, now our payback isn't as great.
Correct.
You're just optimizing. That's
Oh,
wonderful. They take care of all that.
It doesn't make financial sense to produce
Bigger.
more than what you need.
That's what they're gonna credit you back for it, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so consumers will basically, when you generate under 200 kilowatts of DC, because generate DC and then convert to AC, so about 150 AC, you could just roll back that meter and then at the end of the year, they have a true up and, say 1 month you produce more than you use and the next month less. So you want to size it for about, maybe 95% of, annual electrical use to make sure that, every kilowatt you generate, you're getting a full credit back from them. If you generate more than that, they're just not gonna pay for it or pay you some
Mhm.
significantly discounted rate.
At the trial court building, we're using more of the roof. We are, again, trying to maximize all the same parameters we talked about. They're matching the load, so. Goes there. Material recycling facility. This one is a little deviation from what we talked about because we know there's some expansion
Oh,
plans.
that's a good name for that.
What did you say?
call it the materials recovery facility, but materials recycling facility makes a heck of a lot more sense. Everybody always says, to me, what is the materials recovery facility?
Well, that would
It's a great name.
Is that what it's
probably an
meant to
error
be?
on my part then.
No,
I told everybody some materials are like.
it makes sense.
Isn't it more accurate?
It is.
Well, one of the first things we had to do was figure out the names for all the buildings because they changed over time. You know, we have documents that call it, you know, the dog shelter or the animal control
Yeah.
or, you know, Commission on Aging and Senior Center. What really got me is, you know, the drug rehab that was converted to public defender was
Yeah,
referred to as
isn't that
both.
ironic?
So I'm like, we got some kind of drug rehab / public defender building. Oh, no, that's, we don't call it that anymore. So yeah, we got a pretty good understanding of facilities.
So,
Not the exact names of.
so here, we are. This design right now is calling for a larger layout than what you currently consume. Because we understand there's an expansion coming in the next couple of years, so we're trying to use as much surface as we could of the roof. While knowing that it will be used in the next year or two.
I had a question. So we're planning on building putting a tipping floor, correct?
Mhm.
Wouldn't that fall under what we're talking about here
Well-
potentially? If we're gonna build a tipping floor and somebody's gonna potentially pay for us.
Couple of things. Tipping floor, we are looking at some different structures, so think hoop building or maybe canvas.
Yeah,
So
not doing that.
solar's
we're
not
doing
gonna,
that.
not gonna apply to that. But
Right,
I
but
think what they just talked about though, I think what you said, if you're only using half of the MRF roof, then you certainly don't need the roof of an addition. In addition to this, like, if we had more roof space at the MRF, that's not gonna help.
Yeah, and if you
Okay.
get too much larger, now you're going above that 200 kW you talked.
okay, what I'm saying is, okay, so let's say we build the structure. In this process, if we had someone else paying for that, because we're going to put solar on it, then we reduce what we put onto that roof, move it to the new roof that's getting paid for. Is what my question is, why can't
So
we
you're wondering if we can
trade off?
put build into this project, the building
Mhm.
of the additional 10,000 square foot tipping floor.
Get it paid for.
This is curious because we've applied for a couple of grants, right? And used one grant to leverage another to pay for the tipping floor, which we could, if we were granted that, I would think we could roll those funds into this project.
Right.
It doesn't matter to you where the funding
No, it
comes from,
doesn't at
right?
all, and we
Right.
use grant dollars all the time to
Right.
fund some of these projects.
And we'd have to get a better understanding of what the
What it looks
expansion
like.
is and what the additional electric you use. might be.
Yeah,
Is there gonna be
we're
some
working
process
through all
of it
those.
Coming in to sort that, is it a manual process?
It's kind of all being sorted through right now.
No
It's
pun
gonna
intended.
take a while. Yeah, no pun intended. But maybe this could be like the last phase
Yeah.
of this project. So we
Yeah.
have a little better idea of what we're doing out there.
Yeah, so the way our contract works is we have a master agreement that says we're gonna do this, and this, all the things that you pick. Cause you may not choose all these things and, once we do an evaluation, you may say, no, I don't want that, I want this. And that's a great thing about the process, of how we can make those adjustments. But it also allows you to add scope of work to the contract. So once we're under construction and you get a grant, you said, can we add this to the scope? Yeah, we can do that for you.
We're flexible in that way.
Yep, contracts are very flexible.
Now we're getting some.
That's
Okay.
exciting. That's
Ah,
exciting.
okay.
It'll give you that flexibility, so. I mean, you can look and see how that interacts, but that 10,000 square foot is pretty. We just built what did Tim put on Marble Schools?
Oh, that was yeah, 6 classrooms, hallways, and yeah, so that was a good addition.
Yeah, so I mean, the legislation allows us to do that, our contract allows us to do that, so there's no problem, it's just really a timing,
Yeah.
so.
It's fantastic because, I don't know when we'll hear on the grant funds, but I can almost guarantee it'll be after we sign on the dotted line if we move forward with this, right? Just timing wise, but it's great to know we could incorporate that.
Yep.
And maybe some things we don't even know about yet.
Right. Thank you.
And there's other grant dollars, so, I mean, we just received one from MPSC for City of Lansing, as an example. Didn't even know, nobody knew it was out there, and it was able, $1 million grant just for adding some solar. And there were some parameters around it, but those grants are gonna they're gonna be popping up like crazy. As a state, because the governor has a lot of money to dole out, and she really is looking at doing some interesting things about the state, so. I think we'll see some new grant opportunities come, I guess. What I'm trying to think.
And then the last site for solar, the Commission on Aging, here we are looking at, right now in this layout is a carport type design. There are options if you're interested in moving location for one reason or the other, you know, we could look at.
Yeah, so
Pavilion going.
yeah, so we started with looking at the roof. The roof's about 15 years old. Right around here is our standing, you're building a pavilion with shuffleboard in that, so we wanted to avoid that area. So, you know, from a cost perspective, we usually look at, okay, lower costs on the roof and then the ground mount system. So I don't know if, you know, with the extent of the property limits, usually, you know, don't like the idea of ripping out trees to put solar panels in.
Carbon offset.
So you have a carport, so that would give you, you know, potential added benefit of, you know, keeping snow and rain off of
Relocation.
people's cars.
Just an idea, sorry.
Go ahead.
But could you move that carport up to the
Closer to
building?
buildings.
People can
Yeah,
drive
that's
up,
what we would
they walk
like
right
to
to the
have.
building, or does it not really work there?
You go back one. So the way that works, and it's covering two spots, is it's a single slope and it's facing us south. So if you have it on the north, it's gonna cut that out a little bit, or you could extend it further, but then you're not covering two rows of parking. So this way maximizes the amount of covered parking you're getting and the, you know, the direction of the solar panels facing.
Thought of everything.
Yep.
That's gonna be needed with the new pavilion.
Yeah.
You know,
You know,
Being right there,
ancillary
that's
could-
like
Yeah.
ideal.
You could potentially put, you know, a walkway from the covered area under the covered port too, that way.
Yeah.
People don't have to go out in the area that's not been
Right.
cleared. as well.
And the roof is just too new. It's 15 years old. It's fine. It's not.
It'll probably go another 10 or 15 years at
Yeah,
least, so.
that was that midlife crisis
It's a
we talked
midlife
about
crisis.
earlier,
Yeah.
that, you know, we don't want to just replace the roof.
I was gonna point out that with our new jail facility, it does not include any sheltered parking for patrol vehicles and the like. I mean, we invested it all in the building, so that might be a possibility of coming up with a carport structure out there with
Huge.
So through that development, as we're talking about, you know, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff we'll be taking care of on documentation, preparing the interconnect agreements, working with utility companies, making sure everything's sized right, tied into their system, right? There's a lot of safeties and other factors they want to evaluate. Preparing the design documents, you know, reviewing the electrical room and the rooftop units in the space on both these buildings specifically, and making sure we're not getting stuff too close to the units so you can still work on it. All that layout. Structural analysis for this building specifically, both buildings, the admin and this one, but with the chiller going on this building, we want to make sure that we're not adding too much weight to the road. So those are all.
What about a power purchase agreement with the ultimate, I mean, or does that not happen because we're utilizing it? And that's what we're trying to avoid, is sending anything out to the grid?
Those have been used on much larger
Utility
situations, yeah, where you would have that agreement and selling power that you're not using. Is how.
So these are, and that's part of why this is designed the way it is.
Yeah, your best income from the solar is avoiding the 15-cent kilowatt hour that you're paying for the electricity. So if you could put in a building and not have to buy that, you save 15 cents a kilowatt hour. We did look at, you know, the jail property. There's a large amount of land next to it. If you put in a, you know, like a commercial scale several megawatt facility, and then, you know, Consumers has published rates. If you go through them, and it's significantly less. It was like 5 to 8 cents per kilowatt hour. And that makes it not real viable. You could also go on the open market and try to find, you know, partners willing to buy that because they have environmental sustainability goals and they say they're willing to do that. But then you're kind of competing nationwide against it because it's kind of a virtual PPA rather than selling back to the utility.
Well, and under our normal PPA, you're really just gonna get the value of whatever the rental of the property is. That's all you're looking at, because they're gonna take the tax credits and everything else that you get, so depends on, I guess, on the size of it, if it's sizable enough, that might make sense, but on small, on some of these, it's not gonna make any sense at all. You'll get the value of electricity, the full value.
And it's, and we could monitor going forward, you know, down the road if the jail's built, maybe some solar to provide electricity to the jail, or, you know, if conditions and legislations and rates change, and maybe it would make sense.
How
Right.
far, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
How far down the road, like, when we get started in this and, you know, we can add things, but at what point do you start a new engagement? I suppose, or keep adding to this, is there a?
There's no limit, is that what you're asking?
Well, we've just broken ground on the jail project and it'll be a 2-year build. So,
We've had customers do 5, 6, 7 projects. You know, over 10 years,
Yeah,
15 years.
Yeah, so-
Just a short period.
yeah, because we're not willing, we're not ready to give up on that new jail project in terms of adding something like this to it.
Well, and
But you
then-
don't have, the point is you don't have to make a decision now. And in 2 years, if you're looking at it and say, hey, this makes sense, Johnson Controls, can you help us? Yeah, we'll have an open conversation.
So we feel a
Okay.
little pressure though with the Inflation Reduction Act. We, you know, however you get in line for those credits that were never available to
Right.
government before, we need to get in that line. And so I worry about spending 2 years to make a decision on that because those won't be.
Well, yeah, 2
in
years,
2
you're right,
years.
probably won't be, because everybody's already lined up with paperwork ready to go. And you can see, just like some of these past grants that they're trying to pull some of these back already. So, you know, ARPA and all that, if you haven't used it, they're gonna take it. I would assume that, and we don't know that, but you would assume that it's not there forever.
Payment, right, exactly.
So, I mean, I guess once we get started, it's something we can look at, because as long as we have all design, we've got it designed, is it under construction?
Mhm.
I mean.
Yeah, the design.
You can look at
Spring
design doc.
2025 for completion of the jail.
Yes,
Because we'd also want to take a look if you do decide to keep the old jail and refurbish it to a youth center, you know, maybe, you know, mechanical control, solar refurbishment there makes sense too.
Mhm. Yes, that you're hitting all of my questions. you
Yeah,
know,
so, yeah, we looked at
existing
several
jails.
items that were, you know, now is probably not the right time for a potential phase 2, maybe looking at also the Lake Isabella Water District and what could be done to refurbish that. You know, some of the things that might take a year or two before it's the right time, and then maybe take a year to develop. So, you know, we wanted to focus on things that, you know, we know you could get immediate benefit here in the next 2-3 months.
Yeah.
And then look at some of those longer items.
With just in phases.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we do is we actually have a full grant writing department. So as these projects start to come online and develop, we actually go out and look for additional grants. That's how we found. And MPSC was, I think it was $80 million throughout the state of Michigan, so it wasn't huge. But we were able to get some for everybody we applied for, because we had shovel-ready projects to go.
Okay.
But they'll do that as well, and they'll go out and look at federal and state grants. I think we'll see more state stuff come out.
They've got some money to move.
I think a couple of years.
Yeah, she's got some money.
She wants.
The governor has some money. And she's made it very aware that she wants to put stuff out. They actually gave one of our customers, Hope Network, which is just a little not-for-profit in Grand Rapids, about $3.5 million for solar. So, yeah, so we'll see more of these,
Mhm.
and we'll be able to apply for those on your behalf. Again, our grant writing team's really, really good.
So in addition, I'll just put a bug in your ear. I know I've told John this before, but the property that we're building the sheriff's office and correctional facility on, we have at least about 20 tillable acres that is just farmed currently available for an array or something. So that's kind of what we're thinking. So just so that's in your.
Well, and when our solar team's out here, it's not a big deal for them to go to that site and look at it.
Good.
Yeah, do a quick analysis.
Good.
They don't have to engineer anything at that. So they can do that.
Thank you.
Sorry. John. Nope, that's good. Yeah. And it's
Existing,
not me doing the work, so I.
Do it. Great.
utility analysis, what you're currently spending. We have utility bills, gas and electric for a handful of sites. We're missing water at one site, and then we're gathering more data for the other sites as we speak. So we'll continue to gather that data and add to the utility profile as we go. Some bills you don't pay, but you have to maintain the building. So there's that relationship. We're trying to make sure we're maintaining the buildings and saving on the operational side as well, besides just the utility side. As you can see, that the water usage at admin and trial courts, your variable component of what you would actually save if you changed out fixtures is pretty low. So some buildings, it doesn't make sense to do water retrofits in. Even if you save 10-20% of that, it's still only $70, $100. So it's not gonna go very far. Other buildings like Commission on Aging, where you have irrigation and kitchen usage, there's a bit more opportunity there to save from the water side. On the electrical side, for the savings, this includes the solar component. So we're looking at a 73% reduction overall between the 5 facilities. As we talked about, the material recovery facility is saving more than it's using. That's because we're projecting a larger system for that future expansion. So that's all something that we can adjust as we learn more about the expected energy use of that new building. We can kind of tailor this size appropriately. And then on the gas side, some of the buildings are using fairly low energy consumption. The trial court building, we're not even $9,000 a year in gas. So some of the stuff that's already being done is good. We will obviously look at more energy efficiency ways to heat the water, changing out the boilers, putting in more efficient boilers. So we're optimizing the system as best we can. The county admin building, making changes to those air handling units and optimizing the amount of airflow going through, which result in lower outside air. It's not being used. And evaluate all that and gain some efficiencies there. Animal shelter, some of the buildings don't have any kind of a night setback right now. Animal shelter is one of those. If there's a way that we could tighten up that and lower the temperatures when at nighttime, that'd be something that might get you some more savings
Yeah,
there.
I think they just set it to 72 and don't touch it year round.
Yeah.
Just heats and cools.
So
There's nobody there, it's still 72.
well, the animals are there.
Oh, the
Yeah.
animals are there.
Yeah, so you would have to keep it, at least some heat and cooling.
You could
Keep it
bring
something.
I don't know, I set my house to
Keep it
60.
comfortable for human,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
where you could drop it to 65 and always.
Right.
I keep my house 65 at night. In the winter. I think the dogs would be okay with the
Yeah.
coats on.
So those are all things that we'll want to evaluate as we go into this further is, where can we set back temperatures, how much? Some of the buildings that aren't used after 4:30 or 5, makes sense to set those back if they're not currently being set back. Oh, I already talked a little bit about water. So here we're just showing a little bit of savings at Commission on Aging. As we get more utility bills for the other sites, we'll continue to evaluate those.
So John touched on, I don't want to reiterate, this isn't your total bill. For example, the county admin building 700, your total bill might be, I don't know, 2,000. But we can't do anything about the fixed portion of that, there's sometimes it's okay, you have a $120 a month charge and then it's a $1 charge per gallon of water used. So we looked at only the per gallon charge, what we save with the reduction in water. So it's okay if we could save you, 20% of $800, that's only $160. You can't get a lot of improvements with that, replace a lot of faucets.
Yeah.
Probably not gonna be economical to do that.
So the overall summary here, I got a box over my window so we can't see everything there. We're looking at $126,000 a year in savings with the energy efficiency measures as well as the solar photovoltaics on the buildings. And that's about a 55% reduction in your electrical and gas and water consumption per year.
And that's just at these 5 facilities. We're also looking at just about every facility, the public defender, the day treatment, the non-secure, A couple of county buildings, parks buildings. So
Central
this is-
dispatch.
Central dispatch is money. We are looking at potential operational savings at the other facilities at the building complex, health and dental and state police, but since they're renters that pay the utility bills, you don't realize any savings for them, so we didn't include, if we can project the savings, it's just, you don't realize them, so it's
Right.
included in this analysis. Yeah.
The energy savings, you wouldn't realize, but the operational side for repairing stuff as it breaks. So that's part of the analysis. We'll want to incorporate the operational benefits from that system.
Yes, because we do have a number of capital projects in for that building. So,
Oh, there's a lot of needs over there for sure, and yeah, we did intend to address that.
okay, good.
Quick summary here of where you're spending your money by building, admin and trial courts.
Just within the 5,
Yeah.
a
within the
big
five.
portion of money is at the jail, obviously.
Of the ones we're looking at here, we have data for. So admin and trial courts, 27%. And then down to material recycling facility or recovery facility at 10%.
I like Merck, so that's
Yeah,
where
there we go.
right to
Acronym.
right to the point.
And then the preliminary utility savings, by utility type, you can see the huge drop in electrical there from the solar PV system. And then a drop in the gas, putting in more efficient equipment, using the systems when they're only needed. And then a little bit of a drop there in the water and sewer bills from some water retrofits and irrigation changes.
So again, I want to point out that that's just at the 5 facilities, and then one of the things we do is say, okay, that's annual savings. So, when we have in here a sample cash flow over 20 years, so you're going to have that cost for 20 years as a source of funding plus ARPA plus Inflation Reduction Act. Let me take over.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I had presented something similar to this from other projects. So this is now just with the savings that were presented for those 5 facilities and the equivalencies of carbon reduction. So it's 22,000 tons of carbon. It shows here how many million kilowatt hours are going to be reduced from the project and million BTUs reduced. So it's 173,000 million BTUs. So it's really pretty ridiculous numbers. But you say it's a equivalent of planting 341,000 trees at the bottom. I got zoomed stuff over the screen, so I can't really see everything. But, the 2.3 millions of gasoline consumed, homes electricity use for a year, 4,000, 53 million miles driven by an average gasoline powered vehicle. So they're pretty significant environmental benefits. So, not to mention, within the 5 facilities of savings of 55%. So your utility bill is going to go down to 55%. As well as carbon reduction related environmental impact. That's all pretty exciting stuff there. Yeah, one of the things we looked at is you have budget line items for gas and electric and water that are avoided in this project. So you typically will have budgeted items for replacement that, if they're done in this project, are cost avoided. So that's another potential stream that maintains its budget neutrality. So we said, okay, over the next, through 2028, there's another 2.7 million worth of work that needed to be done that could potentially be avoided by this project. We show that the cash flow is 1/20th of that amount. So it's saying, okay, you might not have 2.7 million laying around, but you would have to spend some money, whether it's okay, we need to replace these 12 condensers. We could do 2 this year, 2 this year, 2 this year, 2 this year. Get to the 1 in 10 years, and by then, you have that efficiency. So if you do that all now, you can avoid, that. So if we said, okay, that 2.7 million over the next 20 years would have been, 170,000 a year to get to that number, or however that math works out.
Is the HVAC system for this building in that potential saving analysis that you're?
It's in this, capital
The
improvement plan.
2.7.
It's estimated at 2.4 million. So that's a majority of the 2.7 million. And then, they're all in it too.
So not a lot of analysis on that. You're just looking at
It's just
what we have
analysis,
planned.
Yeah, it's just what would be potential budget items. I know it's not.
Because I'm like, wow, he's really close to.
We just said this is what was in the budget
Okay,
for those
okay,
items. Part of the next step we'd like to get into is a detailed analysis where we say, okay, what does each of these potential facility improvement measures cost? What's it going to save? And then put together a mix of improvement measures that make sense. This item is operational savings, and again, we haven't identified the exact scope that's gonna get you this, that's in the next step. But it's, you know, based on about 6 cents per square foot, that's about $12,000. You know, those savings could be from, you know, avoiding having to buy R22 refrigerant, which is really expensive and it's manufacturer's ban. The only way you could get it is for clean systems. Another one is lighting. LED lights last 20 years. So not only do you get, or 10 to 20 years, not only do you get the energy savings, but you're not having to buy new lights every 5-10 years. So we look at, you know, what your spend is. So one of the homework assignments we've given Steve is to go back through, you know, accounts payable, and if, you know, if it's over by code for facilities and say, okay, what are you spending on average year facilities that you don't need to spend, you know, something broke down, you got to pay an outside source to do that. So, you know, that's on a conservative measure around 12,000 a year. You could spend that much in an emergency replacement and repair of piece of equipment pretty easily. The next federal funds, we did a cash flow with an allocation of 2 million with ARPA, whether, you know, that's not, you know, the right number or not, you know, that's, you know, up to you once we determine, you know, here's what everything costs and here's the savings that are, you know, right now it's projected, but, you know, we'll be able to have done the calculations, identify the scope and calculate savings with guarantees. And to say, okay, here's everything it costs, here's how much IRA is paying, here's how much all the savings are, energy savings, operational savings. And if there's any kind of gap that could be made up if you choose with ARPA funds. Right now, we're showing a base of IRA of $700,000 based on the amount of solar that was projected and some conservative numbers on the percentages. We're pretty confident we'll get, everybody gets the 6%. And the 30%. Meeting prevailing wage is typically only if you're over a megawatt, so even that wouldn't be required. All the systems are under 250 to meet the Michigan requirements. The other ones are kind of in the air, so we did a cash flow based on, you know, not even getting those other percentages. So just the 30. Just the 30. You know, there are some intricacies too that you're to consider.
Fun council.
You'll have to have you know, them review everything and then say, okay, you know, does this make sense, or you know, what are we willing to because we can't guarantee these, you know. This is based on what we know, but we're not financial advisors. So if you're going to make a financial decision based on this available funding, you know, we could guarantee energy savings. We can't guarantee, you know, the federal funding. We follow the guidance. We have attorneys and people very well informed, but since we can't guarantee it, we want to be make sure that it's you know, a decision that you're as informed as you can be about. So we've shown a projection based on the 70,000, because that's what we're very pretty confident that your advice will tell you that you can make a decision on. And then as we get additional guidance, we can forward that to you and, you know, whoever you have, you know, consulting. So the preliminary business case analysis. So we think about $7 million from the various funding sources can be used to fund a project. So we'll get into details. I think I've shown a very simplified version of this. This is a little bit more information. It's not really any more complicated, but you know, there's a net annual savings. You'll see we projected that to be more than is shown.
John, can you blow that up a little bit? I don't know.
I don't know that I can.
I'm struggling. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in presentation.
Oh, that's okay.
Somewhere in this presentation.
Not yet.
Yeah, I can make it.
Sure, if you will send it.
I could
appreciate it. I'd like a copy then.
Yeah, so right now we're showing, you know, starting from the top here, the project costs and the ARPA funds, and the rest would be an amount that would be financed. We talked about, you know, what the best way to do that might be. That's, you know, to be determined again in conjunction with your staff, consultants. But right now we're showing, you know, the 5 million borrowed at a rate of 4.85. That's also pretty conservative. We can be below that, but again, at this point on the, you know, energy savings and, you know, the Inflation Reduction Act dollars and the interest rate, we want to be conservative. So you have a column of the energy savings per year. This makes a big bump in year 3. So we only showed 100% of the savings at the MRF for the first 2 years. Then it goes in the third year to be 163% that was calculated. Because you won't be able to get that until that's closed to year 3. You know, that might be 2027 to 2028 by the time, you know, tier 3 after construction of the project, so it would be construction for a year and a half, 2 years. And then 3 years after that, so, you know, even that's maybe a little conservative, you think that additional energy use is gonna be there before it's 2028. So that's the energy savings, the O&M savings, that was just right now the 6 cents per square foot allocation. The capital avoidance, you know, that was assuming the 2.7 million over time. Rebates, you know, there's 30,000 shown in year 1. That's generally just so lighting and consumers DTE upgrades for more efficient boilers and such. It's kind of just an allocation right now until we get into the exact scope and available rebates for that.
Utility companies have a very prescriptive list of FIM measures that we can apply for. So just based on the scope and try to maximize that. Work with you guys. You'll submit the applications, but we'll help populate all the documents and all the supporting material needed for that.
The next is measurement of verification. So, you know, part of the program is to guarantee those savings. So we come back each year and measure and verify, and you can report each year of those savings. So that's that number. And PSA is planned service agreement. Again, that's just an allocation. Right now, there's no scope. One of the, you know, examples of that is when you buy a new car, you're required to get an oil change. You could take it to the dealer, you could do it yourself, you can hire somebody else to do it. So it's just an allocation of some dollars to maintain some of this new equipment.
Or can be training of staff, and on what the level of your staff is, those dollars are. We do have some very good training programs to help. You know, if we're updating a building automation system, we don't expect you to know how to run it. It's simply, you know, so we will have, you know, standard training, but there's ongoing training after that if you need it. So those dollars can be used for that. And John, just real quick, just so we'll just send you a copy of this, but when you're reading this, you've got the total project cost at the top. And then you've got your, you know, the ARPA funds and the amount of finance and the finance rate. It's a 20-year term. But the sheet reads from left to right. So as you look at year 1, you're adding the columns until you get to the gross savings. So you're just adding across. Just, I think some people get confused because there's a lot of stuff in this. And it just keeps going across. And once you have the savings, you're deducting M&V and the PSA, and it gives you a cumulative cash flow. All of our customers try to shoot for as close to 0 as possible because they want to use every dollar in this program to put towards capital needs. So we generally generate, you know, cash flow at the end of every year. It's at the end of the program, and at the end of 20 years, your savings will continue without the debt payment. So all the solar is still another at least 5 years. As long as, here's an interesting about solar. All you need to do is clean it once a year. That's the only maintenance on solar. It gets cleaned once a year, and it'll last, you know, unless somebody's dropping rocks on it. But it'll be put in places where it won't get damaged. So when you're looking at that sheet, just if you go across, it's easy to look at each year. And then I think, John, you have escalation of utility costs. Yep. So you'll see an escalation utility cost based on we use 100. Is it the 100-year consumer price?
Sure with I'm not sure what the number people.
But so we're not, you know, rate of inflation was at 12%, it's down to 8%. You're just looking back the previous, you know, 50, 100 years and saying, okay, we will have an escalation rate of that. We can send you those documents to look at, but over time, that's why you're seeing an escalation. So, you know, your year 1 cost savings will escalate every year based on inflation.
The idea being, you know, we say that energy savings are guaranteed. What's really guaranteed is the unit of energy saved, and that's tied to what you're currently paying and what
Not dollar amount is.
Sure. What you're currently
You can't guarantee.
We don't control the rates.
We can't guarantee what they're gonna.
Well, we don't
charge you.
control the rates, and if you say, you know what, we're saving energy, we're gonna keep our buildings on 24/7. People do that. If you change that profile of the building, all of a sudden your energy savings goes away. But that's kind of what we help you in the planned service agreement is we'll have people on with the measurement verification. And we're having people getting into the control system and saying, are you guys operate the way we asked you to operate it? You know, are you doing
We have that.
setbacks? So it just gives us an opportunity to sit down with you and talk to you and talk to your department, maintenance department, say, you know, are you guys doing it? Are there problems? And continue those learning behaviors. So
It's part of the agreement.
yeah,
Gives you another set of eyes from an energy perspective, somebody looking at it on a monthly, quarterly basis to maybe tweak some stuff and try and get more energy savings out of the system for you.
We'll get feedback from you constantly over time.
So you'll have an annual payment, and we want to make sure that you have those funds to make that payment, and the cash flow that's shown here is, the saving streams are tied, the payments tied to those saving streams. So you'll see like year two, payment 911,000 because you get $700,000 from the investment tax credit.
so somebody will be assigned specifically to you to measure and verify. And that person will be, here on a minimum of a quarterly basis. And probably monthly the first year. And at the end of the year, they generate a report for you guys to look at and say, okay, are we meeting our guarantee or not meeting our guarantee? And if we are, great. If we aren't, then we have remedies in our contract that we'll talk about when we get to the contract. But there are remedies for you to say, okay, you fix it. Pay me a shortfall check for the amount that you didn't save. So you'll see those in the contract. So there are remedies for that. But that report is important because it shows you that you justified or you can justify the things that you're doing. And, oh, by the way, working together with your team, we've generated what we find is when we work with you constantly, we'll generate another 10% easily in savings because we find things that we can tweak along the way and help you get more efficient at that. Although I think, again, in this report with the solar, that's a pretty good amount of savings. Just those set of buildings.
So where we're at in the steps was MOU sign and present preliminary findings. We also have, I think in your agendas, a development agreement. What the next step is, to delve into all the potential facility improvement measures that have been identified to date. Get them formally designed so that what the project exact cost is. So we've kind of backed into the $7 million number based on, okay, here's all the savings. Potentials, but what is it and that interest rate, and said, okay, there's still $7 million available to do work. Now, typically you'll have 15-20 million worth of work that needs to be done again in an ideal world. So it's okay, prioritize each of those items, pick the ones that have the most savings and then build a project around, approximately $7 million payment.
So what you showed us as far as projects are just potential. We're not to think of, oh, we're doing all of that and it's only costing 7 million. We're not to that point yet.
It could be
Okay.
6 million.
Okay.
It could be 8, and that's where the
Sure.
Well, at what point in time in this timeline do we get the breakdown of exactly what the project costs are going to be per item?
August 24.
It's pretty specific.
For me, that's what I want to see. All this other stuff is great until I see exactly what it's going to cost and what you're trying to tell us it's going to cost for each one of those items. Because that's where I'll come in and with personnel challenge every single line item. Because I want them to be as close to the best possible price for each line item you're proposing.
And it really isn't the price. That's one of the factors, but we want to show you the cost benefit.
Well, I understand the
It's
cost benefit.
right.
I get that part. That's wonderful. But again, if you go back to how much we have to borrow,
Right, yeah.
I want to minimize that to a zero.
Right, and that's, but
That's why I get to
yeah.
zero better. All this other stuff is wonderful, and how much you can save me is wonderful. But I can tell you this, I want our out-of-pocket expense. The closer you can get me to zero,
Yep.
and I'm gonna challenge every item. So whatever you come up with, be prepared. Because I'm gonna do my due diligence with the folks that I know in construction and in this area, to bring that down. Okay, we're clear, we're good on that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I just want you to have all the information, not just, and that's always, so you'll have the price and you'll have, but you may look and say, hey, that's a good price, but the cost benefit to us isn't really there.
But that's
So
for us to
I don't,
decide.
yeah, that's for you to decide, just so you know that. So we're showing you a project that makes sense, based on what we're looking at. You gotta look at the project, so you gotta make sense to us. There'll be some horse trading here and there, I think, along the way to say, I don't want to do that now, or long-term, this building doesn't make sense, or. So you'll have all that information. John actually has a tool that he uses. And I guess we won't go into it today, but it'll give you all those and you can actually do live versions of the project to say, okay, if it were this, or if it were this. And we can recalculate it, and show you how that changes, because if I pull something out here, it changes my savings profile. And if it's minimal, okay, not a big deal, but if it's huge and it affects all these other items, those are decisions you
I
can.
like having the ability to do that.
Yep.
Look at
Oh,
various
yeah.
options.
Yeah, it'd be one of those things, okay, the project's 7 million, what if we take out $50,000 in lighting? Oh, well, now the project actually cost actually goes up because that 50,000 lighting saved 100,000.
Mhm.
And that's what he's getting. Cost is a very important
The cost
component of a cost benefit analysis.
You'll see all that.
Good.
Good, that's what
I believe that's it. So it just kind of hits on all the benefits we talked about. Comfort savings, but yeah, we'd ask you to move
Is this presentation gonna be given to the work session?
What is your pleasure? I'm sure John is willing to come and do the same thing. I'm sure he's willing to come and do a condensed version to the board. I'm sure he's willing to step back if finance wants to present next Tuesday.
To be a really abbreviated presentation to the other
I
four
think a
commissioners.
condensed presentation at the board
Yeah.
meeting would be good,
Yeah.
you gentlemen.
Yeah, I agree.
And Nicole's exactly right. We could do a repeat performance, not me personally, just like Mike volunteered us to work earlier, volunteering these two. I planned a vacation a year ago to go to Japan with my son for senior graduation, so unfortunately I won't be here Tuesday, but.
Hmm.
We'll be,
You'll
Johnny.
wanna get hands with it.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
The other thing. we've
And
done
we're
is-
better looking at.
Yeah. The other thing we've done is a couple of pages rather than a presentation, go in the packets and kind of hit on some of the highlights. Or,
That will help.
Great.
That would help.
or a condensed version of this, so whatever you want, let me know. and-
Condensed version.
Let's do something condensed so that they can have in the packet. They'll have the ability to go out and view this meeting if they want to, leading up to Tuesday's meeting, but maybe a 15-minute.
Yeah,
Maybe
short.
try,
Sure.
but if there's
Yeah.
questions and engagement, let it flow, right? I
We
mean,
can
maybe
do a
get a-
15-minute presentation if they want to go long.
Do you want
At least
a
that.
page document or a slideshow?
Well, if you can give notice to the other four commissioners that they may want to take a look at this presentation, because it won't be provided in full, give them a chance to look at it, and then the gentlemen are there for questions and, question and answer period.
If our fellow commissioners had this meeting plus the PowerPoint to review before the meeting, I mean, they'll come in ready to talk, and your 15-minute condensed presentation will be concise and we can move right through it.
And we'll take this presentation into maybe 2 or 3 pages to be able to stick on the agenda if you choose.
perfect.
Yeah.
I don't like
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
go away with it.
That would need to be to Miss Jessica by Thursday morning. Thank you.
I thought she was gonna say yes.
Yeah, that would have been, yeah.
So the cost now, the 351,400. That's to do the engineering and to come back with a final plan for us. And then we have to choose, depending on cost, what we're going to do. Do we have to do 100%, so not to have to eat those costs, or?
So the project cost gets rolled into the project. So, that's paid kind of.
Oh, so it's only if we say no, thank you, gentlemen, for your time. There's the door.
This is the pull the plug price.
Yeah, it's not, it's not dependent on the size.
Okay.
At what point in the timeline are we responsible for that? If we do pull the plug on,
Well, 60 days.
60 days.
Say you decide you don't want to go forward with the performance contracts, it's gonna become payable. But if, assuming you move forward with, the project and implement the savings, that becomes a line item that gets included in the project. And then it's not essentially a payable, the way it typically works is you're paying from ARPA and, whatever borrowed funds are, as an example, you might get a tax exempt lease purchase, say, and a bank loans you the money and it goes into escrow. And then they're funding the construction out of that for some duration, say 18 months. And then at the end of the 18 months, you start repaying it back with the savings. So your first actual payment that you make from your general fund would be, assuming 18 months of construction and the repayment structure you set up with the bank would be 18 months after signing the contract.
And once we get a better idea of scope and what the contract's gonna look like, we'll do a finance workshop so that it's a little more clear on how all the little pieces are gonna come together.
So as I look at this, August 24th, you're gonna come back with some very concrete numbers as far as costs are concerned. So that gives us from August 24th to September 12th to evaluate that information before we're expected to sign a performance contract with you.
This is as fast as we move. If you say, hey, we need more time to evaluate that, but
Then we can move
we
it out.
come back in October, like it's now, September, nothing happened. This is, just what we're shooting for. There's other things outside of our control. And we submit an application on the solar to consumers. They have 10 days to respond. They respond, everything looks great. Whereas September, if they respond, okay, we have a concern about this and we need another month to run a study on this. Things might shift. And,
Okay.
We'd rather get it right than fast. So we're gonna make sure all the diligence is in there to get, everybody comfortable with what's in the scope. And, if it is,
Well, I think you got our attention. I mean, we know we're gonna be strapped to pay off the jail for the next 40 years, and we've got all these other needs. We're gonna be paying for some of those chillers and that we may get this project, get that taken care of, so we don't have to worry about it. Get us through the tight financial time. Any other questions or at this point?
No, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming. Very interesting presentation.
And then you need that by Thursday morning.
Yes, so that it can go out in the packets for the board meeting.
Yep, we'll have it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you, John, Mike.
Yes.
Very
Excellent.
good.
Done.
Just swapping out one John for another John. Next week.
Two Johns.
Just-
John and Mike next week. Okay.
Enjoy
When I first
it.
started with Johnson Controls, I
Sounds
actually
exciting.
had, there was 3 mics. So I had a project manager and an engineer that went with me everywhere. And it was Mike, and maybe like a John. Always Mike, somebody.
Made a movie.
Mike and Mike.
Son Mike.
Oh.
Thank you, nice to
Thank
meet
you,
you,
gentlemen.
Jonathan. Thanks,
Thank you.
John.
I have a question. I don't know who's on. I saw the pizza walk by. I don't know
Oh,
if you
you
want to take a
did.
short recess.
It's up to you, Chairman.
Are we
You
waiting?
know what's next on the
Is Pete
agenda,
here?
so.
That
Pete
you might need to,
Pete is on Zoom.
do we want, probably not gonna take a whole lot of time, maybe.
Bring him on, let him go.
Sure,
and
it
do
would,
those items.
we could keep rolling and that would allow enough time for the pizza to come in and get that set up, but just so that we don't jump too far ahead. We're at item number 7 now.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I do want to hand out to you, hear back from the county attorney.
Oh, we
So,
need a
John, I'll
motion.
be-
I think we need a motion to,
We
move
do,
the,
yeah.
preliminary analysis by John Ingram with Johnson Controls to the work session.
Or determined by the support.
Gonna move the support and move it to the work session. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, moves forward. Then we'll go on to the, consider approving the project development agreement between Johnson Controls Incorporated and Isabella County for detailed project development to determine the viability of projects for a performance contract and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same. Well, we've heard the presentation. This is the contract that gets it moving forward. As was mentioned, there is a cost to this one now, but it would be rolled into the overall contract unless we decided to forego, back out, then we would have that as a financial obligation. My personal thought is, I think this provides some opportunity. There's not a whole lot of risk, and I think we need to move ahead with it. And this is the contract that would allow it.
Moving into
I
the
agree.
21st century,
Yep.
where we need to go.
Well, to look at some of those facilities that they showed us from the seventies, we're gonna be buying those replacement parts or
We're gonna be
Refurbishments.
replacing units and yes,
Yeah, I think it will do something.
some of that stuff we've gotten our money's worth out of.
I think maybe,
But it,
So-
and it's costing us money.
but now it's got
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
point where it's just,
Yeah,
can't.
it's like having an old car that you have to fix all the time.
Yeah.
Does it
I got one of
make
those.
sense to keep? Yeah,
so they're aware that
Money
we
after
have
bad.
the
Yeah.
2,400,000 for the replacement of the system on this building. But we still haven't taken action on the board for the additional direct spending money for 2 million or so.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that might be something that comes into play too.
That is the couple of million that's
That's a
available.
2 point.
that
That is-
They're talking about.
already.
That it's pretty much the remainder of the direct. The board has not taken any action to approve that.
Mm.
But that's the money that we have available, those ARPA dollars. They're suggesting that they have 2.4, maybe they just had 2 million.
So that's separate from the what we, oh wait, that.
It's the
It's
same,
the same.
but it's a way to optimize it, right?
Yep,
Because
yep, I see.
if we've got the 2.4 million, we could just use it on this project.
Just one project.
Exactly, or like if we're incorporating solar, then there's gonna be a payback of just the HVAC, if we only went ahead with that project, but obviously there's some chillers and compressors and things that are gonna need some attention.
Yeah, to me, to leverage that 2.4, this seems to be the best way to get our biggest bang for our buck
Yes,
is this way.
I think so.
So. I
But
think
that's a
good.
big price tag, right? And I don't want you guys to be pressured into this. I want to make sure everybody has all the information that they
Mhm.
need to make this decision. There's a $350,000 price tag
Mhm.
for this analysis
Mhm.
if you sign this agreement, regardless of how big that project is. And yes, that cost will get spread over 20 years and we'll never see it, right? It'll get rolled into that annual bond payment we have, but
But we'll have taken care of some headaches that are gonna be there for us anyhow.
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is legal counsel's recommendations for modification of the
You
contract.
got it. Yes, sir. I handed that out a little prematurely, but legal counsel did make very few revisions. I have yet to approach Johnson Controls with these, but I don't, some of them are just spelling errors and the other is what law allows, right? We
Otherwise,
can't
right.
grant governmental immunity, or we have governmental immunity. We're not going to waive that. And so Attorney Perone just writes that in. So I'll forward these changes to Mr. Ingraham so he can forward to us a final document for your consideration.
Okay, so you wanna make the motion on this one then?
Number 7.
Yes.
Okay, move to considering approving the project development agreement between Johnson Controls, Inc. and Isabella County for detailed project development to determine the viability of projects for a performance contract and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same,
Moving that to the.
moving
work
that to the regular work session.
I'll second the motion. Been moved and seconded to move this item 7 to the work session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. It moves forward. So we have Pete on. We're number 8. Consider accepting and placing on file the 2023 State Tax Commission Form L 4046 taxable valuation report as presented.
Hi, Pete.
Good afternoon, all.
Hey, Pete.
The 4046 is just a compilation of the taxable value that Judy has put together in previous reports. This is more of just a standard export printout from our system, but it does need to go before the board review before Scott Cunningham signs it and sends it on to the state. So all these numbers have been passed through since final equalization that we did in April.
Okay. I think we see this every year.
Yes.
Any questions?
Nope.
Then I will move to consider accepting and placing on file the 2023 State Tax Commission Form L 4046 taxable valuation report as presented to the work session. Support. The moved and supported to move to work session. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose same sign. That moves forward. The next item is consider approving the State Tax Commission Form L 4029, the 2022 tax rate request form, setting the 2023 Isabella County separate tax limitation operating at 6.61 mils, and authorize the board chair and county clerk to sign the same. Another familiar form.
Yes, the biggie though, this is where you folks authorize yourself to go ahead and collect on your millage. There was not a rollback pursuant to Headley. The primary reason that happened is that there was a capped taxable value this year or rate for at 5% increase in the inflation. As you know, inflation was much higher than that. When we go through and calculate the rollback, we use the actual rate of inflation, not the capped rate, and that's why the majority of the state did not see any rollbacks. So you are still at 6.61.
So is this the final form then, since we don't have any millages on the ballot, or do you come back later with a final?
This is the final form for the summer tax collection. This will be your operating levy. All of your other levies, parks and rec, IRIDE, those sort of things will be, you'll reconsider in September what you anticipate to levy, or if there's anything else coming through for you folks on the either August or November election.
Questions? Commissioner, would you like to make the motion?
Sure. Move to consider approving the State Tax Commission Form L 4029-2022 tax rate request form, setting the 2023 Isabella County separate tax limitation operating rate at 6.61 mils, and authorize the board chair and county clerk to sign the same, moving it to our regular board meeting.
I will second that motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Oh, I did do an aye on that one, by the way. It passes. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Preston.
Thank you, sir.
Folks, enjoy your pizza.
We'll save you a piece.
There you go.
Keep it cold, Jerry. Thank you.
So at this point, do we want to take a short recess?
Probably it makes sense at this point.
Is that good with the people out in the audience? You're welcome to have pizza. You can't hoard it.
It looks like a lot.
Yes.
I was gonna say, somebody saw me coming, they ordered lots of pizza.
We'll take a 10-minute recess then. Then we'll reconvene.
Very good. Like a plan.
Oh. You can't.
Your finger's not protected.
No. Nope, got the cast off. Didn't really do what I was supposed to do.
So can you do like exercises where you?
I can push it up. It just doesn't go back straight by itself.
Is it body you?
No,
To the point of surgery?
no, it hurts from being immobile for that long. When I bend it like this, it hurts a little, but that'll go away. That'll get better. It's not gonna be straight. So just call me old crooked finger, I guess.
I don't know, we didn't, thing is, I'm thinking.
Which way is it?
Is the audio on?
Yeah. This finger?
No, we can't.
I was gonna say something,
Can't
I'm glad
do
I
that.
checked. Let me know when it's off.
Maybe I'm gonna do a little sound check. Good morning.
We will reconvene the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee. And looks like we're going to be starting with business item number 10. We continue to have our quorum of 3 county board commissioners and our county administrator controller. Item number 10. Consider approving fiscal year 2023 budget amendment 2023-12, third quarter budget adjustments for general fund, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Pat, would you like to take it away?
I certainly would, sir. Thank you very, very much. So, the news is at the top line for this budget amendment, right? This whole thing results in a decrease of general fund balance. So we're needing to use fund balance to net this out to zero, right? So we're gonna walk through how we got to this. It's just over $200,000. So we'll, like we always do, we'll walk through the good news and the bad news to how we ended up with that. So a couple of good news is right out of the gate, you see the recreational marijuana revenues are up from what we budgeted for. I think we got a total of really close to $260,000. It's $259,000. So even more than we had budgeted, and we were, we had budgeted quite a bit. So this is good news. The next good news is the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Fund grant, the CESF grant, that's still happening in the prosecuting attorney's office. And we have reimbursement to the tune of almost $25,000 for intern work up there. This next line is opioid settlement dollars. And this is, remember, this is a budget amendment. This isn't cash moving, but if you think about it, when the opioid, regardless of where we put it, when it came at budget time, we had said, oh, we'll be getting about $110,000 of opioid money. Since that time, we know we need to move that opioid dollars over to another fund. The state has come out and said it's going to be a special revenue with restrictions. We have to move it. They've given us a line item of 284, or I'm sorry, a fund number of 284. So once we can mess with fund numbers again and create new line items after our chart of account change today, that's today, we'll finally no longer be handcuffed. We'll have our new line items that have been coming from the state for years, and we can finally make new line items. So that's why we're decreasing revenue in the budget by $110,000. We have to take the opioid money out of general fund. It shouldn't have been there. Local community stabilization, PPT, stands for personal property tax. And back a number of years ago now, 10, 15 years ago, when the Snyder administration had made a lot of changes to personal property tax, and they did away with some of the smaller taxpayers that had anything $80,000 true cash value and less got wiped off the books as long as you applied for that exemption, if you will. They basically had a baseline year back then, and they said, we're making changes at how personal property tax is handled statewide. These changes are going to affect the locals, but we're calling this the base year. And from here going forward, if your personal property tax revenue goes down, then you'll get reimbursed through this local community stabilization authority. If it goes up, then you're in a better position than you were when we made the change. So we don't have to make anything whole with you, was kind of how the state thought. With all of the turbines, with all the wind turbines coming in, as you know, our personal property tax is now through the roof of what it was, baseline 10 years ago. So we didn't expect to get anything from local community stabilization, but we keep getting money. So it's something we haven't budgeted for, and the state keeps sending us because they're doing so well, apparently, according to their formula of dispersing. We still are getting some in the formula. So it's good. It's great news. It keeps coming, yes. Big bad news. Big bad news on this. Federal inmate housing is, we're decreasing that 200,000 based on where we're at in the year. You've heard Sheriff talk about that. They're just not sending the federal inmates, like he thought they would. We just don't have them like we anticipated at budget time. So that is certainly a hit, but in a big part of why this is a decrease in funding.
Is that solely because of the feds? Or does it have anything to do with us being short-staffed over here? Or no?
I don't believe
They're
so.
still saying we'll take them, but they
Yes.
just are not sending them
Correct.
to us. Okay.
That is my understanding, and this is also with the increased rate. Remember,
Mhm.
Sheriff negotiated and was successful in getting that per day rate increase, but even with that, the numbers are so low from what was anticipated. We're not reaching revenue. And this is concerning because this is one of those revenues that we anticipated in the long-term forecast, in the 10-year forecast, right? That was one of the revenues that we anticipated would increase when we built the new facility. So it's not trending. It's not trending that way for sure. So that's the revenue news. So let's go to the next section, and it's a lot of expenditures, but bear with me. These first several increases, you see 4 different increases for different departments. A lot of this has to do with staff turnover and some with staff then the staff shortages. So PTO payouts were increasing at trial court. That could be from someone retiring or leaving that we weren't anticipating, right? We have more payout. Administration, we've got some overtime in here. I believe that was solely the payroll and benefits administrator, how we know she was not able to get duties done in the 37.5 hours that we have. This would be over 40 hours. And this just kind of tells that story of part of the reason why we went to a payroll and clerk and an HR specialist. Computers and admin, we are adding $2,000 to that budget because of the extra staff member that we're bringing on. That we need a new computer for the payroll person. Salaries and overtime and equalization, again, due to staff shortages down there and getting up to speed in that department. The next few lines that deal with the prosecuting attorney's office, they're that 101,229. Those actually net out. So we're decreasing salaries and wages regular in the prosecuting attorney. We're able to do that because of that staff turnover, right? And so we've got what we would call lapsed wages. We've got available salary and benefits. So we're putting that out to some of the line items that they're over. Overtime, contractual services, dues and subscription. I think contractual services is where they're paying those interns out of. Thank you. So this is actually software. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So the 10,000 is for the Carpel software. Additional costs that we didn't know at budget time with that software, I believe. If you follow this down, Department 258 is information systems. So you see some PTO payouts there and just a little bit of new equipment. The trash pickup in facilities, that 9,100 actually is taking trash pickup out of facilities, and down below you see 1,800 of that is going to the court building. 1,600 is going to ground maintenance and snow removal at the court building, and 5,700 on the second page is going to trash pickup in corrections. That's just using the budget as a tool to account for those expenses where it makes sense. So a net zero Also in facilities, you see an increase of $26,800 in building repair and maintenance, but that's coming from that next line, a decrease of $26,800 in new equipment. The need was not there. I think at budget time, we had built in some extra for new equipment that wasn't necessarily attributed to any specific capital project. So since he does not need that, he's moving it into where he does, building repair and maintenance. So the next thing that nets out, do we see about halfway down, it's an increase of $27,710 in building repair and maintenance at the court building. And you see just a couple lines later, he's doing the same thing out of new equipment in the court building. So some, built up those capital projects aren't doing them or aren't needing that. And so moving it into building repair and maintenance. It's kind of telling of what we just maybe went through too. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Contractual services and drains is increasing a little over $7,000. They did bring in some contractual services to help in drains, balance some of their accounts. Salaries and wages in sheriff is decreasing by $10,300. The same sad story that we have in prosecutor's office, right? There's available wages we can move. So off to the increased side, you'll see overtime for sheriff increasing by $4,300. Vacation and sick payouts, uniforms and accessories. So that's where that $10,300 went to those line items. Further in the sheriff's, the 101,301, we're taking more of those regular salaries and wages, $44,000. And we're decreasing the same line items in 301, salaries, FICA, health insurance, disability, life, retirement, workers' comp. And we're moving those, if you see at the bottom of that page, over to 101,311. That's a new school resource officer department. So if you remember, we have Special Deputy Will Bailey now serving in the school system. So we want to account for that different in our budget. We had lumped that position into our 101,301. Now we're pulling it out into 311, similar to what we do with MC deputies. They're in their own, like Isabella, deputies are in their own department. So that handles page 1, page 2. We are decreasing salaries and wages and corrections, story, lapsed wages, and we're moving those to 2 other line items in corrections. It's netting out $2,200 to new equipment and a little over $1,700 for property taxes. And you might say, well, why is corrections paying property taxes? Is because we are responsible for the tax bill on the new property this year. The tax bill this summer, nope, or maybe this was the winter one that we've already paid. Probably, we wouldn't have the amount of the summer yet that we were paying.
Tax bill.
So December 31st, the year prior to that, it was being farmed. And as I understand it, because we leased it to the farmer, he was responsible for the tax bill. That relationship ended in the farming season, right? I think his last thing was he was responsible for property taxes that year. We've not entered into a lease this year on that property. The site work is taking up more land than really makes it feasible this year. We're also looking at doing a split on that property because when taxes were triggered, it's the use of it. We can't just say it's just agriculture because we've got that building on there. What I'm being told by equalization is the best thing we can do is do a split on that property, get the ag in one and get our sheriff's office and correctional facility on its own property. Then going forward, if we lease it out, we just lease out the one parcel and then we maintain no taxes on the part that's being used for a public purpose. The farmer that's leased would have to pay taxes appropriate to the ag use on that parcel. Yeah. That's a long explanation of why we're paying property taxes, but it's not a line item you usually see. 426 department is emergency management. We are decreasing the health insurance line, just because we budgeted healthily there. And we are using those to cover some, but not all of the other emergency management department expenses that are increasing there. A little bit with the health insurance, HRA, disability, workers' comp. We just needed to beef those up. And then the $12,000 additional equipment expense for emergency management has to do with the new phone system and the extra equipment that they needed for that. Just beefing up PTO payouts and animal control and personal car mileage there for, I'm guessing for those trainings that ACO Marble has been attending. Any questions on general fund or how we got to a total decrease of 202, 182, 38? Budget.
So what was the overtime for equalization? What was that related to? You know?
I know that that is our.
We don't have
I
a
know her
whole-
name. I can't think of her title. It's something wrong, like appraiser or something like that. It's a funny title, but a lot of that has to do with the overtime a certain position has during certain times of the year. I know April is a really tough time for equalization while they're working to get all those taxable value numbers in that Pete just presented to you. So part of it is that, and I know that there was some staff shortages, ongoing staff shortages in that department that for a while ultimately Pete's company jumped in to cover, and now we do have a county employee hired in that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions on these adjustments?
Not sure.
Thanks for explaining.
It's a big one.
I will move, let's see. I will move consideration of the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 2023-12, third quarter budget adjustment for the general fund. And authorize the board chair to sign the same to the work session. Or been moved and supported to move to the work session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Moves forward. The next one is considering the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 2023-13, third quarter budget adjustments for other funds, and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
Excellent.
List is not quite as long.
It is not, and it doesn't affect general fund, and it all just nets out. It affects a lot of funds though. As you can see, let's start top revenues, and I'll just do these fund to fund, I guess. Parks and Rec Fund 208, we're increasing the unreserved fund balance and decreasing capital outlay for the Coldwater Lake Sewer Project. That's not happening this current fiscal year. We budgeted that it would happen, so we're just taking it out. Registered Deeds Automation Fund is decreasing their fund balance because they've got to increase an expense for data processing as they still work through their new software, and I think that's in part some hardware that they need to buy. The 284, that's going to be a new fund number. It's the opioid settlement fund now, and you're going to see that fund balance increase by the 383 that we've taken in. I think that's ours plus Union Township's opioid settlement monies that they sent to the county to handle for them. And so then we're increasing fund balance and increasing revenue, opioid settlement revenue in the budget for that fund because we don't have a budget yet. 288 Commission on Aging, they're decreasing their fund balance to pay for the items you see down below. This is the new caregiver position increasing salaries and benefits so that hopefully she gets that billed. Again, wasn't budgeted for. Last item is 542, our inspections fund. So we're actually increasing fund balance because we are increasing the amount of revenue that we're going to bring in. Nope, that's contractual. Increasing an expense. Melissa, do we have that? I'm sorry. Are you looking at the 2023-13 budget amendment? It looks like we're increasing fund balance and inspections, but increasing the expense line. That doesn't
We're
help me
increasing the
understand.
expense, but we have revenue that we're increasing to cover those expenses.
Okay.
Nothing to do with fund balance. The other side would have been fund balance had there been no revenue.
Sorry.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we got one more.
It's a 619 line item. It's a revenue. Sorry, I wasn't looking. Everything else is fund balance on here, so.
Mhm.
Plan review in jail. We didn't account for it.
Perfect. So now they've got those revenues to offset the increase in expense to pay Spicer for the review. Okay. Any questions on that? It all nets out to zero. Oh, I did miss one. There is on the bottom, it's a offsetting expense 11,125 for Commission on Aging. They're increasing building repair and maintenance and taking it out of capital outlay, just kind of like facilities does. Pretty straightforward. Thank you for all your work on those.
I don't have a question on the list. Just said we're gonna be managing the township's opioid funds. So if we decide to put it into, let's say, a fund for future use, do we have to get township's approval on that, or?
No, I don't believe so. They've sent it to us knowing that we're gonna satisfy all the requirements that we have to satisfy for use of those dollars. Melissa, can you remind me of the amount?
$68 or $98.
How much?
$68 or $98, one of the two. It was a very.
Wait,
And
Said we can't do anything
know
with
what?
programs with that small amounts of tickets.
so they just felt it was much better to just add it to our kitty, if you will, than to even hold a meeting to decide what to do, right?
For $98.
How do they
Yeah.
do the report back to, on that?
Well,
Anyhow,
we may have, well, I think it'll be their reporting and they'll probably just say that they turned it over to the county. Yeah, so not a huge amount, but certainly we're thrilled to have the extra.
any other questions on the list?
Commissioner.
Would you like to make that motion then?
Or move to take this item to a regular board meeting in order to consider approving fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 2023-13, third quarter budget adjustments for other funds, and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
I'll support that motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Moves forward. Item number 12. This is, it will be the budget
This is-
draft number one.
This isn't the numbers yet. I'm just
Not-
handing out budget calendar. I thought that might be helpful. Handing out the last forecast. I thought you might like to know how this is fitting in to that. Although this does say, thank you, Chairman. Although this does say April 12th on it, Melissa and I did make one change to this forecast and I didn't update the date. I apologize, but Melissa, I think the only thing we did in this forecast was take out DTR as a revenue source. So I think that's the only change. As a- It's just, yes. So I've handed them all out now, so you might have to jump in and help me later, but. So I just thought that it might be helpful for you to have those and what you really want to receive right now. Drum roll.
Okay.
It's actually not as big as last year, as Melissa reminded me.
So it's less worse?
It's less worse. It's less worse than last year. But we're approaching and it doesn't surprise us with the forecast, just about $4 million that we have requested revenues of 27,322,000 or an estimated expenditures of 31,287,000 and change. That's very elevated, inflated, right, from the current. Why so much higher? One of the things we'll talk about in here is the sheriff's tower project, the $4.8 million grant that he got from the state to put that tower project in. It's not in a fund by its own. Those expenses are running through general fund and those revenues are running through general fund. They will offset, but they will elevate. Okay, we don't have a $27 million general fund revenue stream. Okay, I just want to make sure that we understand why it's elevated. I do have a couple of, I just have a couple. I don't share as you, but I know it's going to be hard for you guys to sit out there and not be able to follow along. So, just you know, the big old draft. So don't hold us to any of this. So we're just going to walk through, kind of like we did the budget amendments. We'll just walk through starting with the revenues. So we always give the last 2 recent years, most recent audited year, current year activity, current year amended budget, next year's requested. So you can kind of follow along at what the trend is. Hard to believe, and trust me, Melissa and I are conservative with revenues because we would rather do the hard work now than to try and find money in the 3rd, 4th quarter, right? So even being conservative, we've got we're looking at another $1 million in property taxes next year from what our current amended budget is for 23. And we can hardly believe it because turbines are coming down. But remember when Pete brought his numbers in April, even with the turbines, we still have an increase. Okay. And that's what he's brought current. That's not 24 numbers. So Pete was really confident in what he told us. Melissa and I are very diligent to take those captures out, right? We've got a lot of tax capture districts to the tune of over $500,000 that they capture of county operating revenue. We've already figured that in, and it's a surprise, but that is a best estimate at where tax revenue will be next year. Licenses and permits, you can see that we are trying to be conservative there and bringing them down. Realistically, we've got 119,000 total budgeted for that. Federal, state, and local contributions are just over 7 million. When you look at this draft one, the numbers for 23 skew this because remember, we just recognized $8 million of ARPA. And that's in here. So you almost have to consider 2023 an anomaly when you're looking at these things. You could go back to 22, but there's even some ARPA in there, right? It's a little inflated, but that's where that state police grant for that tower project is located. And that's just over 3 million in the current year. I'm sorry, in 24, because we will have some of those expenses in the current year. The project has begun. You remember you paid the first 10% payment on it. So really that's what's inflating that federal, state, and local contributions. Also, up in that category is state shared revenue. We're seeing about a little over 220,000 increase in state shared revenue. Remember, the budget called for a 5% increase ongoing, a 5% increase one time. So we're seeing those state revenues increase. for the most part, that is what makes up that federal, state and local contribution, that big jump from, like, if you look at the 2022 number. Charges for services, again, trying to be very realistic, and not really putting any increase on those, making them fairly flat. Fines and forfeitures, we, from the current activity, down a little bit, but I think early on this year, we had a large forfeiture that is kind of elevating those numbers. Interest and rents actually are a little higher than current. Trying to think of what's driving interest and, interest, not rents. It is interest and being comfortable with actually building interest in as a revenue line into our budget again. Feel good.
Good.
Yes, other income, 142.3. Melissa, can you help me on that? I'm drawing a blank on other income. Is that like rebates, refunds, maybe?
That's in the forfeitures and our workers' comp dividend.
I don't print my report by your groupings. My apologies. Oh. No, it's not that. I was thinking it was like commissary, but that's in transfer in from other funds, isn't it?
So it's like last year we had the extra 100,000. Not budgeted.
Thank you.
So what if it's opioid related, fund related settlement monies?
Yep, that's exactly what she said. So transfer in from other funds, these would be indirect costs, that's the bulk of it. We're looking at indirect costs of almost $850,000. And collectively from all the funds that we collect, and then almost $120,000. That would be the transfer in from commissary to cover. We'll go over. The sheriff had a capital request for 2 vehicles, so traditionally we look at his commissary fund to see if we can transfer in monies from his commissary fund to cover the cost of those vehicles, rather than general fund just paying for them.
Keeping stuff in house.
Yes, so all of that totaled revenue up to just over $27 million. Okay. So if we go to the next page, we'll start expenditure summary. Our current amended budget in the Board of Commissioners department is quite sizable compared to where we're at next year, but that's because of the we put the boardroom AV project and the wage study in the Board of Commissioners department in our current year. That's where those live. Those projects aren't budgeted for next year, unless of course they don't happen in the current year and they have to go to next year. Isabella County Trial Court. So I would just want you to focus on those 2 far right columns, right? If we're looking at what our current amended budget is and what the 24 request is, that increase, it's the $80,000 increase. That's going to be just salaries and wages, right? We've already built in a 2.5% increase in salaries in this requested budget. It's kind of the same thing with adult drug court. You're gonna see a little increase in there based on salaries. Juvenile drug court is actually down a little bit. Swift Insure, again, just up a little bit for salaries. Admin up about $100,000 for salaries. I did not do personnel requests because I've already been to the board to discuss the HR payroll, doing the payroll benefits administrator into HR and payroll position. So I don't feel like I have to come to the board to ask to budget for those. They're in this year's budget now. And I don't feel like I have to come to the board to ask to create a deputy administrator position because I feel that already exists. But what I would have to do in the current years is come to you with a budget amendment. But in fiscal 24, I feel the position already exists. I'm letting you know now, well in advance, that I have built into the request a deputy administrator controller into the admin.
That was gonna be my question. Is
What-
that in there? So,
Yes.
It is. Okay, good.
So we've added HR specialist, payroll
Mhm.
clerk, deputy administrator, and we've removed payroll benefits administrator
Mm.
and an accountant.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense.
All told, all of that nets out to about 93,000. It's more.
Mhm.
We're adding a body, it's more, but I want to put a point on it and explain
Mhm.
the difference. So really, I think coming back to the same amount of employees we had, just restructuring. And hopefully that structure will hang going forward. So that's the increase of about $100,000 in administration. Elections has quite an increase in their budget because there's a couple big elections next year. The budget year, county clerk budget up just a smidgen, as you can see. Equalization department is actually down a little bit with their new hire in there, I think at a lower rate. Prosecuting attorney is up just about $100,000 shy. All the requests are built in here for where prosecuting attorney Barbary wants to see his staff, right? This is the requested budget. So when he wants his senior APA at this level and his assistant APA and his chief, this reflects all of that ask. Okay, it's
So
in
an
here.
upfront ask versus coming back to us.
That's a harder sell, right?
Well,
Get your requests in there and then
Yeah.
we work down from that.
yeah, that would be my expectation moving forward, that they all do that. That's built in
It's
upfront.
it's all try, yeah, we really try
Otherwise, we're-
to make this the scariest number you will ever see.
So otherwise, we're understaffed, we're trying to catch up all the time. We always seem like we're catching up. We're always, not paying people enough, and I want to get on top of that whole process. Because we need to be the better at that.
Managed assigned counsel, this is the general fund portion for the public defender's office that, it can't go under public defender's office, juvenile neglect and abuse cases, although that certainly could be changing. That as we see PDO become more staffed, I believe that some of this comes down. Register of deeds is just a small increase.
Can I bring something up now?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
back of my mind.
Sure.
I know there's been state legislation that allows for county clerk and register of deeds to be combined. And I know Clinton County did. I don't know what the advantages are, the disadvantages, and I'm thinking that Karen's probably getting close to retirement. I'm not sure, but that may be something we want to look at in the future.
Absolutely.
Keep all the pertinent people in the loop and see if there's any efficiency to gain there.
It seems like that's where the conversation starts in my mind is with the register of deeds and I think the benefit budget wise comes from, you're combining two positions into one. So you're going to have some salary and benefit savings there. You're not going to pay the same to one person to do both jobs.
And I don't know how many counties went to that. I know Clinton did. So it might be a good discussion with them.
Yeah, I think it's a great discussion when it's politically favorable to do so. It's a great discussion. The remonumentation grant, requested budget is down. You've heard, Ms. Jackson talk about, you know, the transition in remonumentation and the work that's being done there. Minor increase in county treasurer's department, that's probably just that 2.5% wage. Large jump in information management, and that is because Michelle Ray has been upfront to announce she's looking at retiring next year, and she's got a plan in place to transfer her knowledge before that happens. And there's a request in the budget for an IT deputy, basically. It would be an interim position. We're kind of working through how all that would work, but basically her training someone for the year. Why we still have full IT staff on.
Get ahead of the game.
Getting ahead of the game. I did recently at my administrators conference, I did poll a room full of about 30 administrators. I wanted to know how many IT staff they had. And they schooled me. They said, yeah, Isabella, you're pretty light for the number of employees you have, for the size that you are. So Michelle's been doing us a really good job for a really long time, making it work. So we probably have some growing to do in that regard. Facilities took a little jump from 862,000 to 3.8 million. That has a lot to do with the 3.155 million in capital requests from facilities in fiscal 24. Obviously, a huge part of that is the 2.4 HVAC system in this building. Some of the other big projects, roof replacement at State Police, Health Department, EOC building. A bunch of air units, got some parking lots in here. Pickup truck. We do have, remember in the forecast, we talked about building in $250,000 additional capital in facilities going forward. That is in here as well. Got a few capital projects at other funds, but the bulk is here in general fund, and that's why that big jump. Court building costs are a little lower. I think there's less capital over there next year. Central services is our postage. We have all our postage come the mail room here. It's all one collection, one bill. And as you can see, year to date, we're trending over the $100,000 that we budgeted in the current year. So we've bumped that up to 120. Hopefully that's enough. And obviously postage rates are going up as well. You see a jump in the drain commissioner's office of about $100,000. That comes from a request from that office for reclassifications for every position in that office. This is something we saw in the current budget as well. Sheriff Department, you're seeing a major jump there. Again, that's that tower project pushing that jump from 4 to almost 7 million. Road patrol, minor increase. Same with Mid-Michigan Community College. I think that's based on the new rates, and there's some additional, he had added an additional day. So that's why MMC is going up so much. Lake Isabella is where Tim Warner's time gets charged when he does work out there. The next page in Department 311, you see the soil resource officer being budgeted. Oh, corrections is probably the next one that takes a big jump from 3.8 to 4.3 million. Some of the things driving that are the anticipated costs in inmate medical. Sheriff has requested $600,000 in fiscal 24 for inmate medical costs. he's researching alternatives. You see a decrease in community development. I'm guessing that has to do with the new staff versus staff that had retired last year maybe and were at the top of the scale. Emergency management is a bit of an increase. I think that's probably upping Helen's. Well, probably upping Mark's hours in addition to Helen being on full-time the whole year. Animal control, I feel it was kind of a sizable increase for animal control. Capital for, oh, okay, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Control capital.
Capital improvements.
Yes. I think they're DB. Okay. Drains, public benefit, that's the county drain at large. And that's actually coming down. That's just whatever payment is due on all of those drains and whatever portion is ours, but we are looking at still trying to maybe save some of the interest costs for some of these drains that we have chosen to finance county's portion. Landfill, that is up a bit. I think it was a good conversation at Drain's budget meeting about what the requirements are for testing. Yes, the landfills passed the 20-year testing requirement that was put in place by DEQ when it was closed, but now with the PFAS and now we have new testing requirements for new stuff, so we've built that back up. Substance abuse, that's that 50% that goes to mid-state of our convention facilities tax. I skipped over 605 public health. We don't like to talk about that one, but it's contagious diseases, right? There's certain, when certain clients present with certain illnesses at the health department, the county's on the hook for those. So you never know what to budget for. You just kind of look at the trend and think, maybe this is good. Medical examiner allows for, I think, a 4% increase every year. So they take that, we build it in. Mental health is at 216.3 forever and ever. Veterans Affairs is up a little bit. I think that's because of that state grant. And again, that 2.5% wage increase. Human Rights Committee has a small ask in there. Cooperative Extension, I think, had a 4% or 3.5% increase for their contract. Operating transfers out is going from almost 4.5 million to 2 million. And that is because in the current 23 year, we've budgeted a lot of money to be transferred out to the jail fund as those you've got some fund balance that is still assigned to that project. So we're still using that. If we build anything in for our portion of the jail project, we're going to use fund balance. And so I didn't want to overinflate the budget even more by building that in and building. If we need it, we'll come to you, we'll ask, or if it's known at budget adoption time, we'll build it in then. But we know that our portion is coming out of fund balance. Whoo, that gets us to 31.3 million in expenses. Any questions on revenues or expenditure to general fund?
Get back a page here. So we had that request by that nonprofit that been working with the courts. Is that figure included in the Isabella County Trial Court?
It is. Well, it's in, did we put that in Chalk or we put that in Board of Commissioners? I think we put that in the Board of Commissioners.
We can move it.
Yeah, but the $15,000 request is in there.
Okay, and if we go to special elections in November, that amount that we would need to reimburse the townships and election authorities? Is that in the elections or?
That is, there is nothing in here about, in that regard. That's a good, it's a good, it's a good thought, something I hadn't thought about at budget time.
To get back this whole idea of under promise and over deliver.
The only other question I have is all the federal finding on taking of property values and the settlement with the counties on the west side of the state. Where are we with that? What is our potential liability and
Where
we
do,
need to start budgeting for that?
where do we set that money aside and to what extent?
Because if 43 counties have settled, the attorneys are
Coming from the other.
contacting and probably FOIAing information right now. And we'll be faced with that. Uh-oh. The doors are being closed.
No, he was taking care of stuff. I know when we originally, I know there've been some movement in that regard lately. I don't know if Treasurer Pickens has a handle on the amount. I know at one time we surmised maybe $6 million of liability. I don't know what the recent decision, how that impacts that. But I thought I had heard maybe more like $1 million of liability potential, but we still need to go down that rabbit hole.
It's still pending, but the last ruling we got from the Hennepin case was a positive ruling. But they didn't clear up everything. They said it was retroactive and surplus. They didn't mention anything about fair market value. But the Proctor case, another case, says they're still asking for fair market value. So
Depending on who it play out,
Got to be decided.
they're gonna determine.
they're all kind of waiting for the Supreme Court approval, and they ruled on Hennepin, Tyler and Hennepin, before they make their rulings. But there's still a question there. They're pushing real hard that it's a federal case. It's a federal takings. Takings at the federal level, this is fair market value, is the remedy. Even though the Supreme Court said, no, it's the surplus, just like the Raffelli case did in Michigan. Michigan's a little ahead of the game opposed to the Minnesota case that was there because this was a Minnesota case. We have in play now, last 2 years, an opportunity for these people to get their surplus by filing. That's kind of the direction that the Supreme Court went to as well. So we're setting pretty good. It's a difference of $5 or $6 million. It was fair market value to. And we don't know. The other thing is, it was determined in Raffelli that it's retroactive. Whether it's retroactive for everybody or just that Raffelli case, it's not determined yet. I'm afraid that it's going to be retroactive. We don't know how many years. So Raffelli's 3 or 4 year deal. So they say, once you file, retroactive, or is it once the case was determined? It's retroactive. So it could go back 3 years, and go back 6 years to the statute of limitations. So those things are still up in the air.
The worst case scenario was exposure.
Well, so it's
Best case.
1.5. Yeah. That's a good number. Pretty good number, I think. Let's go back.
Let's go back.
Yeah, because they said in the case it was 2010. Now, are they meaning 2010 foreclosure year, which would make 2007's, or did they mean 2013's foreclosure year of the 2010 taxes? It's another question that needs to be answered.
So many questions and such a big impact.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Your gut feeling is what? Where do we fall?
Yeah,
1.5 or 7?
I'm shading more towards the 1.5. I mean, I feel better about the 1.5 now. Prior to, I didn't, because there's no rulings by Michigan Supreme Court or the federal courts. The other thing is I believe these attorneys out there are going to come and
We're gonna get a waterfall of FOIAs. How many people get surplus back this many years, and then everybody's gonna be filing. So we're gonna get probably 100% worth of filings on the surplus ones that we had.
People will be made well aware of their opportunity.
Oh, yeah, they're already out there.
Yeah.
Other ones.
We are going, because there's gonna be some costs.
Yeah, oh, yeah, oh, definitely, definitely.
So-
some costs.
We split the difference. Do we lean more towards 1.5 or do we lean more towards 5 or?
But I'm a pretty conservative guy. There's still that question out there, and with the courts, it's a crapshoot with me. Like I said, I feel better
Don't take
because,
that personally.
huh?
Don't take that personally.
Well, no, I just because they've switched. I mean, one side of the state in the circuit courts, 6th district said you can have class action. The other side didn't. Okay, and they've had it, they said yes, and then they said no to it. So the settlement that just went on in the west part of the state, on the Wayside Church case, it was an agreed settlement. So, you know, all those 42 or 43 counties, that side of the state are all gonna settle up to this deal. That left open the east side, which I believe will still meld into the whole state. But again, like I said, it's that question of fair market value or not. That still needs to be, Supreme Court needs to rule on that to say.
Do we have any idea of the timeline on
They,
clarification?
they said 6 months from just the other day, so
How does that fit into our budget process?
after.
Yeah, it was long after. Yeah. I'm sure there'll be
Going on for 6
offsetting
years.
good
I know.
news coming.
Going on for 6 years, so. It is farther along than so. Those courts still.
Tough.
One more thing to point out. Department 301 on the first page, Sheriff's Department is sheriff's is spelled wrong.
Thank you.
That's a 2R?
And then the only other thing that keeps going in the back of my mind is we've got our 10-year forecast. And I know every year we dip into the fund balance because we increase our spending. You got a very difficult job ahead of you balancing out this 4 million, almost $4 million. And as I hear the requests, I don't have a problem with any of them.
Right,
I wish we had a
Yeah.
right.
checkbooks and write them.
Yeah.
Right.
You got a difficult job ahead.
I look at these and I'm very used to drilling into them, drilling down, because there'll be some that'll pop up and I know I've got to drill into it. And I'm looking at these and out of all of those, what do I have? I have one that strikes me as I need to drill down and really ask some tough questions, but most of them are pretty straightforward in their asks. So I appreciate the department heads, asking for what they need as opposed to what if they think they can get. Put it out there, tell us what you need. I'd rather go that route.
Yes.
So maybe we should let you continue with all the good information to us now.
Sure. So we are on this page now where it's got general fund and a few other funds. We just note some of our more major funds on this. You will see in the far right 2024 requested budget, every fund listed here is using some fund balance in order to balance their budget. Parks and Rec got the big Coldwater Lake Sewer project built in there next year, so I'm sure that's elevating things. Commission on Aging, projecting to use less fund balance than this year in the budget. Usually the fund balance used out there is quite in line with how much we charge for indirect costs. And that's pretty much in line. I think we get around 350,000 from them. Central Dispatch, again, less fund balance needed in 24 than current, but still utilizing building inspection fund, using less than last year, but still some. And again, it's about that amount that we take in indirect costs to general fund. So without that, they'd be netting zero. Recycling, using only a little bit of fund balance, but that is with a $415,000 appropriation from general fund. That's built into those numbers that you have there. The next page just quantifies all of the personnel requests. There's, as you can see off to the left, most of them have to do with general fund. And then below the totaling almost $270,000. Below that is friend of the court. The FOC referee is an attorney, so that's getting brought into that standard 8 discussion. MRF operations manager and drivers are being requested for an increase. And Parks and Rec, the admin assistant 3 is being requested for a reclassification. So you can see those requests coming in departments. Off to the left, you can, or off to the right, you basically see, whether it's, a lot of these are reclassification. They're wanting a position to go from a certain grade to a different grade, and all the standard 8 is built in here too for.
Who's admin?
Well, like I said, admin did not do one of these because they're not new positions or increased positions. I'm not asking to hire anyone at a higher grade. This
You're
board's
still-
already approved that, yes. And so there's not a personnel request here, but I knew it was important to be upfront about wanting to fill that.
Yep.
The next page quantifies the capital improvement requests that we've received for general fund, just over $3 million. You can see most of those come from facilities driven by the $2.4 million HVAC system. Sheriff's got 2 vehicles requested. Drains has a pickup truck requested, and emergency management, some security cameras.
They can get a car for $42,000. What's he getting a deal like that?
My deal.
So, really,
Yeah, he gets the car, and then you see that the equipment is,
the equipment's very expensive. I understand
Yes.
that part, but just a base
Yeah.
vehicle.
yeah, through that My Deal
It's
program.
significantly under MSRP. for those.
Okay. My
And
deal.
so, and all of our departments can do that. And so with this drains request for a new truck, we kind of went through this logic last year, right? They had asked for the request. It didn't make it to the recommended budget. They have a fair, I forget the details. I want to say it's maybe like a 2015, 2016 truck. Doesn't have a ton of miles on it, so there's still some value there. So they could trade it in, get a My Deal, and we end up not paying that much. Or it's a decent truck, not a lot of miles, so you keep it, and it's just different philosophies. But with the My Deal price, we do sit in a nice position, purchase vehicles at a low amount. If we can keep the mileage low on them, we maintain a nice trade-in value on them to then
So net,
get another
right, net
lower
cost
cost vehicle.
becomes lower.
It does. Same reason that Jake leases equipment out of the MRF, right? You can have a new,
You track it every so.
yeah,
so like
exactly.
Parks and Rec does. Yeah, same
Yes.
idea.
Yes. So it's general fund capital. The last page is the capital improvement requests from other funds. Not a ton of requests this year. We always see something from parks, lots going on out there. We always see something from Commission on Aging.
I've spent significantly more on a Hobart mixer than that. Where they get, what is she buying a 30-year-old?
Well, that could also be, I'm sure there's a My Deal lender for that
I
too.
spent 35 grand before on a used one, a good used one, 35 grand for a
She's
Hobart.
probably got one she'll sell you.
I don't want to. I don't no desire to own
She needs
another
a new
Hobart.
one.
I'm just like, wow, that is,
Use for that.
that is
You
a,
have to inquire about
that is a
that.
good price. I'm going, wow.
Largest projects on there for sure in Parks and Rec, Coldwater Lake Family Park Sewer Project and the Herrick Rec Area Playground. That's going on out there. So that is the request. And again, yes, just shy of $4 million. We've seen bigger. We're not scared of it. But now the, you know, the sausage making happens and lots of meetings will happen. If I've got recommendations to cut requests, then this is the time now where we meet with departments to talk about forming that next visit with Finance Committee, which looks like it will be July 11th. Okay, so about a month from now, we'll have a second draft to you. And hopefully the number shrinks.
Hmm.
We do a reconciliation, Commissioner Embry, because it'll be new to you. We just basically, this is the number we start with now.
Mhm.
And any changes we make, it is right on there so you can see,
You see the change.
oh, we got the insurance renewal back.
Mhm.
Oh, insurance went up 12% and we built in a 10% increase in these numbers, right? Or, oh, it came back and we've got a single digit increase. We can cut some of that expense out.
Understood.
Any other questions on the, where we at? Budget process at the current time?
Sure.
I don't think we have to make a motion on this one. Invoice discussion list, number 13. I don't know if you have any questions. I looked at them and I didn't find that I had any questions.
I didn't have any.
You have anything, Tobin?
Nope.
No,
sir.
good. Must have seen pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Run across anything that struck me as odd.
Just take these on to the
Second.
next work session. Don't need a motion on that one, right? It's a discussion, but don't we usually do the motion? Or maybe, I don't know.
I think it's just discussion.
Okay.
I think
Do
it's
you want to take
automatic.
the fiscal update or what do you want? What do you want to take forward to Tuesday? Do you just want this in your packet? Do you want? I
Yeah.
will go through it like I did here. They can watch this if they want.
If they have any questions, they can get back with you. Just say we're in the process of reviewing and whittling it down to something we can afford.
So we won't
Yep.
take anything forward to the work session or you want to just take this and
I think it's good that they know,
see it? I do too.
Mhm.
and if they have follow-up questions, I'll just suggest that they contact your office.
Sounds good.
Perfect. So we'll put the discussion on there. This is an attachment
Mhm.
and you can tell them that at the meeting.
Okay,
Perfect.
You'll be fun.
announcements. How about call to the public? We are adjourned.
All right.
Very efficient.
We'll get you back to work so you don't have to work till midnight.
Yeah, right.
Is that-
Very Chairman. Yes, sir.